Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Carly McBride. Carly McBride was born on April 14, 1983, to Steve McBride and Lorraine. As a child, she was cheerful and outgoing, sharing a close bond with her parents. However, as an adult, Carly began to experience many difficulties, which led to her abusing alcohol and drugs. Despite these challenges, she worked hard to overcome her addictions. By 2014, Carly was 31 years old and living in Belmont, New South Wales, Australia. She was a mother to two children, William, who was 7, and Cadence, who was 3. The children's fathers were different men. It is known that Andrew Easton, the father of Cadence, was one of the last people to see Carly. In 2013, Carly entered a rehab center to get rid of her addiction. During her time there, she met Sale Kenneth Newson, and their friendship gradually developed into a deeper relationship. Starting in August 2014, Carly and Sale spent nearly all their time together. Although they occasionally had arguments, they appeared happy overall. On September 30th, 2014, Sale took Carly to Musselbrook to visit her 3-year-old daughter, Cadence, who lived with her father, Andrew Easton. Carly visited Cadence for a few hours, entering Andrew's house around 12:30 p.m. Sale did not stay with her, but they agreed that he would return in a few hours. However, when Sale arrived to pick up Carly, she was missing. Carly's ex-husband, Andrew, mentioned they had a fight, which led Carly to leave. She intended to walk to the nearest McDonald's, about a 20-minute walk from Andrew's house. Sale, confused as to why Carly hadn't called to inform him of her whereabouts, he began trying to reach her by phone. After several unsuccessful attempts, he decided to drive to McDonald's, hoping to find her there. During the drive, he looked around in case Carly was waiting somewhere along the way. He thought it was possible her phone had died, but Carly was not at McDonald's or anywhere nearby. Sale drove around the streets of Musselbrook for a while, but he couldn't find Carly. When she didn't come home to Belmont that evening, he contacted the police. The detectives asked him to describe what had happened. Sale explained that he would drop Carly off, and she would walk to the front door with her daughter, turn around, and wave goodbye. He mentioned that she would usually call him twice and send him 2 texts during each visit to let him know she was okay. However, he noted that on that day, he dropped her off around 12:30 p.m., and everything felt different. He did not hear from her again at all. He texted and called her, but the phone kept ringing, and she didn't answer it. Sale arrived at Carly's ex-husband, Andrew's house around 4:30 p.m., as he usually did, to pick up she. However, Andrew told him that she had left after an argument at around 2 p.m. and walked toward a McDonald's about a mile away. This raised an important question: did Carly really leave Andrew's house, or was he withholding information? Andrew claimed to be the last person to see her, but there were no other witnesses to confirm that Carly left. The police spoke with neighbors and others along the route she might have taken to McDonald's, but since no one saw her, suspicion about Andrew increases. There are no surveillance cameras near Andrew's house that could verify his statement about Carly leaving at around 2 p.m. Investigators also reviewed footage from surveillance cameras at McDonald's but found no evidence that she had been there. The police conducted searches in fields behind a nearby residential area for clues, but the chief investigator stated that nothing lead had been discovered. The investigation will continue, and the police are asking anyone with information about Carly McBride's disappearance to come forward. She was last seen in blue jeans, sandals, and a yellow t-shirt, carrying a tan handbag. After getting a search warrant, the police searched the house Andrew, where Carly was last seen. A team of officers hoped to find clues about the disappearance of she. However, their search of Andrew's house revealed no new evidence. There was no sign that anyone had committed a crime in that house. Despite this, investigators found something concerning. Carly's Facebook account was deleted just hours after she went missing, before an official report was filed. This deletion sparked many questions. Are Carly's account deletion and her disappearance related? Did she delete her account herself, or did someone else do it? What was the reason for the account deletion? The Facebook messages might hold clues about what happened, which could explain why the account was removed. To find answers, detectives reached out to the U.S. Department of Justice, seeking assistance to recover Carly's account and identify who deleted it. Although Facebook data analysis is conducted at their headquarters in Menlo Park, California, Sergeant Wright mentioned that Carly's Facebook friends could also provide useful information. The New South Wales police are asking if anyone had contact with Carly on Facebook or other social media platforms in the days before her disappearance. They are looking for anyone who noticed something unusual and are encouraging them to come forward with information. Carly's parents doubted that she simply ran away to start a new life. Her close friend and roommate, Kylie Smith, mentioned that everything seemed normal when she spoke with Carly on the phone while on her way to Musselbrook. Kylie described Carly as very relatable and a free spirit. She was easygoing and loved life. She was always supportive of her friends. If someone was having a tough day, she could sense it and reach out. Kylie said that, every day they wake up not knowing what happened or where Carly is. Please, have some conscience and come forward with any information. They just need something to hold on to. The police conducted a comprehensive search of the area where Carly was last seen before she disappeared. This search involved search dogs, police divers checking the Hunter River and nearby locations, as well as aerial surveillance and patrols on trail bikes. Unfortunately, this did not lead to any clues as to Carly's whereabouts. As months went by, the investigation yielded no results. Carly left no traces after her disappearance. She did not turn on her phone, her social media accounts remained inactive, and she did not use any bank cards. Investigators started to fear that Carly may no longer be alive. 9 months after Carly went missing, her parents asked for help in locating their daughter. They were assisted by Detective Timothy Seymour, who could gather any information that might aid the investigation. Carly's mother, Lorraine, wept during the public appeal and begged for help to find her beloved daughter. She urged that if anyone knew anything, no matter how small, they should come forward and help family her. Detective Inspector Timothy Seymour stated that officers had been working hard since Carly went missing. He explained that they had a lot of information to review but were still asking for help. He also said that important information can come from a person, even if they think what they know is unimportant. As time passed, Carly's parents began to accept that they might never see their daughter alive again. Lorraine wrote a touching letter to the man who took her daughter from her. I believe everyone knows what happened to my girl or has seen the events of that tragic day. Please help us for her children. They are innocent and beautiful babies. Whoever you are, you have taken their mother away, their source of joy and happiness, their pillar of strength. Lorraine wrote a heartfelt letter to the man who kidnapped Carly. In her letter, she stressed that, no matter who he was, he had removed their mother from their lives, which took away their joy, happiness. They will never experience Carly's gentle, warm kisses or her comforting hugs, or see her bright smile. Their cherished memories are gone, and they cannot say goodbye to her. Lorraine speaker that sorrow, anger, and frustration weighed heavily on them. After failing to find Andrew's involvement in Carly's disappearance, the police began investigating another suspect, Sale Newson. They discovered that Carly and Sale's relationship was troubled, primarily due to Sale's jealousy, which often led to arguments. Although they have only been together for a relatively short time, but Sale insists that he loves Carly very much, saying that she is the first woman he has truly loved in 14 years. He urgently sought information about Carly's disappearance, helped create a Facebook page, offered rewards, and approached people in the area where she was last seen. Despite publicly expressing his love for Carly, but Sale quickly began intimate relationships with other women. Just hours after reporting Carly missing, he propositioned several women for sex. Carly went missing on September 30th, but by October 2nd, and Sale was spending the night with another woman. Yet publicly, he portrayed himself as a heartbroken individual mourning the loss of his girlfriend. Detectives found out that Sale and Carly had a disagreement 2 days before she went missing. The argument was about Facebook messages that Carly received from other men. However, this information was only circumstantial evidence, and they needed more direct evidence to file any charges against Sale Newson. In April 2015, authorities conducted searches at 3 locations, 1 in Muswellbrook and 2 in Scone, a town in the Upper Hunter Shire of New South Wales, Australia. Scone is located approximately 15 miles from Muswellbrook. During these searches, police confiscated 3 firearms and a quantity of illegal substances, leading to the arrest of a 24-year-old man named James Anthony Canine. Although the police stated that these charges were not connected to the ongoing investigation into Carly's disappearance, they surfaced during the investigation. Therefore, it's important to remember this name. Almost 2 years had passed since Carly was last seen alive, and the police were still investigating her case without any new leads. However, on August 7, 2016, there was a lead new. In a rural area near Scone, 2 local pedestrians discovered remains in a shallow grave just a few feet off the road. Forensic analysis confirmed that these remains belonged to Carly McBride, a mother of 2 from Belmont who had disappeared on September 30, 2014, in Muswellbrook. Police delayed announcing the discovery of her body for 4 days in the hope of gathering more evidence. Superintendent Guyana emphasized that the police do not think Carly, 31, was taken from the street by a stranger. He stated that this was not a random act, and they were investigating her past and reaching out to as many people as possible. He refrained from naming any suspects, noting that the investigation was still in its early stages. Superintendent Guyana said that they have worked hard on this case over the past 2 years and the team is eager to find answers for Carly's family, added that they still have a lot of new information to process, and the case is still making good progress. Carly's parents have been desperately searching for information about their daughter's case. Lorraine has asked anyone who knows anything to come forward, as they want to find out who is responsible for her death. Ending Carly's body has given them some sense of closure. They are very grateful for the support from law enforcement and the community throughout the search. After 10 months of diligent investigation, a warrant was issued for Sale Newson's arrest on June 19, 2017. He has since been arrested and is in custody, but he denies any involvement in Carly's death. However, Sale was not the only person facing charges. Police suspect that 26-year-old James assisted Sale in disposing of Carly's body. Sale and James met at a rehabilitation center for individuals struggling with alcohol and substance abuse. Although they left the center at different times and for different reasons, they maintained contact afterward. Sale Newson's trial started in August 2018 and extended over several years due to the police only having circumstantial evidence. Prosecutors claimed that Sale met Carly after she left Andrew's house, attacked her in a fit of jealousy, and then disposed of her body. Forensic experts concluded that Carly died from multiple blunt force trauma, which included 23 skull fractures, 13 torso fractures, and injuries to her spine and ribs. The judge pointed out that Sale had claimed to the police that he was an experienced mixed martial arts fighter, boasting that he had had 20 fights and had won them all, and that he had trained with world champions. The judge determined that the cause of death was severe brain trauma resulting from significant force applied to Carly's head, concluding that he was convinced Sale had caused her death using his fists, feet, or potentially both, as well as objects. During their search of Sale's house, police discovered a map inside a shoebox under the bed. The map featured a circle drawn around the towns of Musselbrook and Scone, with Carly's remains located precisely within that area. Additionally, the map displayed the numbers 1, 2, and 3, which pointed to locations outside Musselbrook. Senior Constable Mohini confirmed that the first two numbers indicated the positions of cameras. After police discovered Carly's remains in 2016, Sale called her father, Steve. In their conversation, he revealed that the skeleton found was missing hand bones, a detail that the police had not shared with the public. Only a small group, Carly's parents, the police, and the Department of Forensic Medicine at John Hunter Hospital, were aware of this information. Authorities suspected that Sale was aware of this detail because he had intimate knowledge of the crime scene and was responsible for leaving Carly's body there, which was discovered 2 years later. Additionally, the clothes found on Carly's remains were the same as those she wore when she disappeared, indicating that she likely died soon after leaving Andrew's house. The police were unable to locate her purse and phone. When they examined Sale's mobile phone, they found that he had deleted Google location data for the period between September 18th and October 2nd. 2014, during the trial, investigators discovered that a photo of Carly, taken by Sale while he was traveling to Musselbrook, had been edited and cropped before the police were notified of her disappearance. When the search for Carly started, Sale promised a $20,000 reward for information about her location, but his bank account indicated he was broke. This suggested that he made the offer knowing that no one would find her, so he wouldn't have to actually pay the reward. From the beginning, Sale also tried to involve himself in the police investigation to shift suspicion away from himself onto others. While police and emergency services were gathering information, Sale also searched the surrounding streets for security camera footage or witnesses. However, the police stated that this search Sales was not meant to gather information, but rather to cover up details and see if anyone had witnessed him met with Carly. As volunteers and police organized their search around Musselbrook and distributed Carly flyers, Sale was in Sydney texting friends about driving an Audi R8. He claimed to be very familiar with the area where Carly was discovered and even described it to her father, Steve, despite only having seen footage of a staged crime scene set up by the police. The images show a staged crime scene created by the police to observe Sale's reaction. As investigators conducted interviews, reviewed his Facebook messages, and listened to his phone calls, they found more evidence against him. They discovered that Sale had searched online for how to delete a Facebook account. Although his account remained active, Carly's account was deleted shortly afterward. Although the initial evidence was circumstantial, but the prosecutor noted that when the clues were put together, they started to form a clearer picture of the case. Ultimately, these pieces of evidence built a strong case that eliminated other explanations for Carly's disappearance and the discovery of her body, which was about 82 feet from the roadside. The judge determined that the motive behind the violent and impulsive attack on Carly was jealousy stemming from annoyance. After picking Carly up from Musselbrook, he learned that she had spent around 90 minutes with Andrew instead of with her daughter, as they had intended. Carly's daughter was not at home during that time, and the fact that Carly was alone with Andrew for an hour and a half led Sale to attack her in a fit of jealousy. Carly's mother, Lorraine, said at the sentencing hearing that she had spent the past 2 years filled with sadness and anxiety. She longed for her daughter, who was always full of life and loved to return home to her 2 young children. Unfortunately, she said that the next time she saw Carly was in the morgue, a day she described as the worst day of her life. Lorraine mentioned that Carly should be living her life with her children, her sister, her father, and her. She added that after that day, she never wanted to hear, speak, or see the man who took her beautiful daughter's life again, and that she refused to think about him anymore. Lorraine stated that she would miss Carly every second of every day for the rest of her life. Nearly 7 years after reporting Carly missing, 43 years old Sale Newson was found guilty in December 2021. He received a sentence of 27 years in prison, with the possibility of parole in 2038. After the sentencing, Sale addressed the judge to reaffirm his innocence. Sale said that he understood the verdict had been issued. He addressed the judge, asserting that he was innocent, and from the day he reported Carly missing up to that moment, he had fully cooperated with the police, the courts, and the jails. He had been convicted of a crime he did not commit and that someone else was responsible for the crime, not him. Sale also said he now faces a huge challenge in proving his innocence in court. James, who assisted Sale in disposing of Carly's body, claimed he was not guilty. However, in July 2022, a jury convicted him. The judge stated that James had lied to police during 3 interrogations to provide a false alibi for Sale, and had deleted data from his phone to hide his actions. At the time he was charged in the Carly case, James was already incarcerated for illegal possession of weapons and prohibited substances. In November 2022, 31 years old James Anthony Canine had little reaction when he was sentenced to 7.5 years in prison, followed by a 4-year parole period. After the trial, Carly's parents expressed that although justice was served, the verdict would never bring their daughter back. The case of Amy Widener. Amy Widener was born in 1973 into a large family. She has an older brother, John Paul, who is 1 year older than her, and 2 younger sisters, Tiny and Cassie, who are 1 and 4 years younger. Their mother, Gloria Widener, raised the children alone after divorcing her father, who was absent from their lives. The family lived in a house in Indianapolis. Amy often acted as her mother's maid, taking on responsibilities such as cooking, cleaning, and caring for her younger sisters. A diligent student, Amy aspired to become a teacher and was known for her bright, cheerful personality and charming smile. At the age of 14, Amy's life changed dramatically when she became pregnant. She was afraid to tell her mother and tried to hide her growing belly by wearing loose clothing. For more than 5 months, her family did not realize she was pregnant. However, as she approached her 6th month, keeping the secret became more difficult. Amy finally found the courage to tell her mother. She burst into tears and said, "Mommy, I don't want you to hate me." Her mother, Gloria, was shocked but held her daughter close, comforting her despite feeling overwhelmed and uncertain about the future. "I was so shocked, I couldn't believe it. I thought it was the worst thing that could have happened to me." Amy Widener's child was born to Tony Abercrombie, a 20-year-old friend of her brother. Their relationship was kept secret and no one in the family knew about their intimate relationship. When Amy's mother, Gloria, learned of her daughter's pregnancy, she took immediate action. She banned all contact between Amy and Tony and ordered Amy to completely cut ties with the father of her unborn child, setting strict rules for her future relationships. On October 25, 1987, Amy became a mother when she gave birth to her daughter Emily. Remarkably, just 6 days later, Amy returned to school, balancing her motherhood and academic responsibilities. Gloria Widener understood the importance of education to Amy's future and was always supportive and caring to help Amy with her studies. She also recognized Amy's need for a normal teenage life and time with her friends. Despite the challenges of motherhood, Amy was determined to study, receiving praise from her teachers for her hard work and dedication. Amy's family adapted well to having Emily in their lives and shared the responsibility of caring for her. Over time, things seemed to improve, especially for Amy, who was overcoming her challenges. Just when they felt stable, things took an unexpected turn. On November 13, 1989, 16-year-old Amy Widener woke up with a severe sore throat and decided to stay home from school with her 2-year-old daughter Emily. When her mother, Gloria, offered to take Emily to a babysitter, Amy decided to keep her daughter with her. After the family had breakfast, They parted ways for the day. Gloria went to work, while Amy's siblings went to school, leaving Amy and Emily at home. When Gloria could not reach Amy by phone at 9:30 a.m. and several hours later, she became concerned. She asked a neighbor to check on them. The neighbor reported that the house was quiet and unresponsive, prompting Gloria to leave work and rush home. When she arrived, she found Emily sitting on the stairs and called Amy, but there was no answer. Gloria entered Amy's bedroom. The situation in Amy's bedroom was both tragic and shocking. Amy was found dead and naked on the bed, with a lot of blood around her. Gloria called 911 in a panic. When the police arrived, they conducted a thorough search of Amy's house. At first, they suspected a break-in. They found that several stereo devices and a graphic equalizer, owned by Amy's brother, John Paul, were missing. Additionally, a piggy bank in Amy's room, a glass jar containing about $50 for school, was also missing. There was no sign of forced entry. The perpetrator may have entered through an unlocked back door or front door, or it was likely that Amy herself opened it. Key evidence was found in Amy's room, a bloody handprint on the wall and several hairs, both from her body and head, that were likely from her attacker. The medical examiner determined that Amy Widener had been hit in the head with a sharp object, sexually assaulted, and finally strangled. It is disturbing to think that Amy's 2-year-old daughter, Emily, may have witnessed these tragic events. Fortunately, she was found safe and unharmed. The police realized that Emily, although only 2 years old, might have valuable information. To help her feel comfortable, they used finger puppets while gently asking her questions about what she remembered. During this interaction, Emily, who was active in the room, only said that her mother seemed very angry that day. To collect evidence, the police collected the attacker's bloody fingerprints. They also collected the victim's clothes and bed linens from the crime scene to assist in the investigation of this tragic event. During the investigation of Amy's case, the police conducted inquiries among family, friends, and nearby residents. John Paul, Amy's 17-year-old brother, was also questioned by the police. However, he had a credible alibi and no evidence linked him to the incident. Tony Abier, Amy's ex-boyfriend and Emily's father, was also questioned. He expressed his deep love for Amy and denied any intention to harm her, and provided a strong alibi for the day of the murder. Police also investigated Troy Jackson, who lived next door to Amy and knew about a stereo system that had been stolen on the day of the murder. Troy denied any involvement and had no visible injuries. He provided hair samples that did not match those found at the crime scene and was cleared of suspicion after passing a polygraph test. In addition to the 3 main witnesses, police also spoke to Amy's other friends, neighbors, and classmates. They collected fingerprints and hair samples from all of them, but none of them were considered suspicious. Amy Widener's funeral, which took place shortly after her death, drew large crowds to pay their respects. Her passing had a profound impact on the community. Police were present at the funeral, discreetly observing attendees as part of their investigation. One particularly touching moment was the display of a beloved photograph of Amy, in which she wore her favorite white floral turtleneck. It was in this precious garment that Amy, a young girl whose life ended too soon, was laid to rest. After the tragic loss, Amy's family still held out hope that her killer would be caught and brought to justice. However, as the days passed, weeks and months passed, no suspects emerged. After Amy's death, Gloria Widener took in her niece Emily, taking on the role of her mother. The grief and fear weighed heavily on Gloria, as she was constantly haunted by thoughts of the killer and worried about her family's safety. She never left her daughter home alone and lived in a constant state of anxiety as the attacker remained at large. Although Gloria considered moving to a safer home, financial constraints left them with no choice, forcing them to endure these difficult times in their current home. Amy's friends were also deeply affected by the tragedy, fearing that they could be the criminal's next target. They asked their parents to guard the house, even boarded up the windows to prevent a similar incident. One day, Gloria returned home, expecting to find her younger daughters home from school. Instead, she found only eerie silence. The house was strangely empty. She saw the girls' outdoor shoes in their usual place, which worried her. With each step upstairs, her mind raced with terrifying thoughts of what could have happened. By the time she reached the bedroom door, Gloria braced herself for the worst. When she entered the bedroom, she was relieved to find her daughters asleep. As time passed, Amy's daughter, Emily, grew up without the burden of memories of the tragic events involving her biological mother. She had no recollection of the police interviews or being told about her mother's death. However, the police would occasionally return to check on Amy's family, inadvertently reminding them of the pain of that terrible day. Gloria revealed that, at some point, the constant reminders of the past became too much for her to bear. All she wanted was for the police to stop reopening old wounds and for her family to find peace, because nothing could bring Amy back. 13 years after Amy Wagner was murdered in 2002, something unexpected happened. The Indianapolis Police Department received a call from a 29-year-old man who claimed he had a dream in which Amy spoke to him about her death. He shared some details about the murder, but most of what he said had already been reported in the newspaper. The police investigated the man, who was 16 at the time and lived across the street from Amy. They ran his fingerprints and DNA to see if he had any connection to the case, but found no matches, so he was released. Although his call did not provide any new evidence, it did lead police back to the cold case. In 2002, they reconnected with some of Amy's friends and acquaintances, especially those who had been in legal trouble over the years. However, despite these new efforts, the investigation hit a dead end again, leaving the case unsolved. In 2011, a Facebook group called Remembering Amy was created by Amy's friends, which sparked interest in her unsolved murder. The police officer working the cold case was unfamiliar with Facebook, so he asked his colleague, Officer Bill Carter, to print out information from the group. This assignment piqued Bill's interest in the case. Although his background was in non-homicide crimes, he felt motivated to review Amy's murder case file in his spare time. Bill thoroughly examined the case, which was more than 20 years old. He reviewed every detail in the file, reassessed the evidence, checked school attendance records from the day of the murder, and analyzed Amy's funeral attendance list. He entered the case information into a database and discovered leads that had been overlooked, including several friends of Amy's brother who had never been interviewed by police and whose DNA had not been collected. In an effort to find new leads, Bill contacted Amy's family and friends in 2011 to collect the names of people who might have information about the case. Bill began collecting DNA samples from people who had been overlooked in the original investigation in 1989. After the murder, police surveyed the neighborhood where Amy lived and recorded the names of residents. Bill returned to these records and the area to check to see if any residents were still living at their original addresses. His investigation led him to a woman who lived across the street from the murder scene and was a neighbor and friend of Amy's. She struggled to recall the names of the boys Amy had befriended. While she recalled most of the names that had already been identified and investigated, she also mentioned a name that Bill had never heard before, Rodney Dink. In 2012, Bill received permission from the Cold Case Unit to officially investigate the Amy Wagner case. His first task was to find Rodney Dink to determine if he was a suspect. Amy's family knew Rodney well because he was friends with Amy's brother, John Paul. They often spent time together biking and fishing. When Bill asked John Paul about Rodney, he described him as a quiet, mostly private person who had never aroused suspicion. Bill then went to the home of Rodney Dink, 40, who lived with his mother near Amy's family. Rodney worked at an auto parts store and had been divorced for some time. He had an adult son with whom he had little contact. When Bill arrived at Rodney's home, his mother answered the door and told him that Rodney was at work. Bill left his business card, asking Rodney to call him when he got home. That evening, Rodney called Bill, who quickly arranged a meeting to discuss Amy's murder case. Rodney agreed to meet and invited Bill to his home. However, when Bill returned to Rodney's home, Rodney was missing. Bill looked into Rodney's criminal history and discovered he had been convicted of assault in 1991 and burglary in 1997. Rodney's fingerprints were in the database, so they compared them to the fingerprints found at Amy's house. The purpose of the comparison was to either link or clear Rodney of the crime. The results showed that Rodney's fingerprints matched the bloody fingerprints at the crime scene. After 23 years, a suspect was identified, but Rodney disappeared from the house, leading to a search for him. The investigation took a turn when Rodney's credit card activity showed that he had rented a car equipped with an OnStar tracking system. The police tracked the car to Indianapolis, where Rodney was hiding at a friend's house. When confronted by the police, Rodney threatened them with a knife, claiming his innocence. In the ensuing chaos, he injured himself and attempted to attack police, but was eventually subdued with a taser, handcuffed and taken to hospital. During a 2-day police interrogation that was filmed, Rodney admitted to killing Amy. He said he intended to break into the house and had not expected Amy to come home because she was sick. Rodney described how he entered through a sliding glass door and was surprised by Amy, who attacked him, causing him to panic. In his haste, he picked up the nearest object and hit her in the head, tragically killing her. Over the course of 2 days, he spoke of his vague memories of that day, explaining that it had been 23 years since the murder. His description of the events was vague. At one point, he mentioned going to Amy's house with someone he called Bag. However, Rodney struggled to recall specific details about this friend, including his appearance. He said that Bag waited outside Amy's house before going inside, where the two confronted Amy. When asked about Emily, Rodney said that he did not see her during the incident and was unaware of her presence or crying, not realizing that Emily had been nearby throughout the entire incident. During questioning, Rodney remained calm and respectful, showing none of the typical signs of a murderer. Due to the time that had passed since the crime, his DNA was collected and, as expected, matched semen found on Amy's bedsheets and blankets in 1989. In a rare moment of honesty, Rodney told police, "I always tried to be a good person, but I guess deep down inside I'm not." Both fingerprints and semen at the crime scene were confirmed to be his, and there was no evidence that anyone else was involved. Rodney's confession shocked Amy's family. The quiet and unassuming man was also a close friend and classmate of Amy's brother, John Paul, who lived across the street and frequently visited their home. With the horrific crime he had committed. In a surprising twist, Rodney even attended Amy's funeral, grieving with the others and sending condolences to Gloria Widener. Police Bill later found Rodney's name in the funeral book from the funeral. It wasn't until he reviewed the case that he remembered Rodney being mentioned in 2003 by Tony Abercrombie, Amy's ex-boyfriend and Emily's biological father, who noted Rodney's frequent visits to Amy's family. Bill believes that in 1989, Rodney was never considered a suspect or questioned at the time. While investigating Rodney's past in 2012, police discovered another disturbing fact. Rodney's biological son, Dylan Dink, had been imprisoned for a crime committed in 2009. At the age of 16, Dylan killed his mother, Mary McHenry, after claiming that he acted in response to her abuse and insults. He used a baseball bat to inflict the fatal wounds. Tragically, Mary died from her injuries, and Dylan turned 17 just days after the incident. This situation was very similar to Rodney's own past, as he was only 18 when he killed Amy. The similarities between father and son committing serious crimes at a young age made police nervous. Rodney had little involvement in Dylan's upbringing, having divorced Mary early on and leaving her to raise her son alone. However, he attended Dylan's trial in 2009. Dylan accepted a plea deal that resulted in a 20-year prison sentence, meaning he was scheduled to be released in 2029 when he would be 37. In the case of Amy Widener, Rodney initially claimed that Bagg was his accomplice in the crime. However, just 10 days before his trial was set to begin in June 2013, 42-year-old Rodney changed his story and confessed to killing Amy himself, saying no one else was involved. Due to his confession and the evidence against him, Rodney was sentenced to 65 years in prison in 2013. After the case was over, Amy's family held a reunion with police officer Bill Carter to remember the 24 years without her. They released 24 balloons into the sky in her honor and expressed gratitude to Officer Bill for his essential contributions to the case. Officer Bill identified Rodney Dink as the perpetrator after only 12 days of investigation, essentially closing the case. In recognition of his exceptional efforts, Detective Bill Carter received an award from the Indianapolis Police Department in January 2014. Although he was offered a position in the homicide division, he decided to stay in his current role. Amy's daughter, Emily, grew up and graduated from the same high school her mother attended. She then went on to attend college. In search of more opportunities, she moved from Indianapolis to California. Amy's mother, Gloria, has publicly expressed her ongoing grief and daily remembrance of her daughter. She still lives in the house where the tragedy occurred, with Amy's room still decorated with pictures of her. The space now also welcomes Gloria's grandchildren for holiday visits, bringing joy and new life to a place once filled with sadness. The case of Annie Tayan. Annie Tayan, born May 1, 1965, was raised by her mother and has a lively personality. She loves to dance, play, and appreciate the simple pleasures of life. Annie cherished the dream of a large family, considering motherhood her main aspiration. She became a mother at a young age, giving birth to her first son, Jimia, when she was 18 and her second son, Sean, just a year later. When she turned 20, she had a daughter named Shane. Unfortunately, shortly after Shane was born, the children's father left Annie and chose not to be involved in their lives, leaving her with the hardships of single motherhood. Annie managed a household of 3 young children while living in a rented apartment in Maine. In 1987, when her youngest daughter, Shane, was just 6 months old, 22-year-old Annie began a new chapter in her life. She met Michael Palin, 32, a Navy officer stationed on the aircraft carrier Bramby. Their meeting took place in Portland, Maine, where Michael's ship was docked, and he felt a strong attraction to Annie during their waterfront encounter. Originally from Charleston, South Carolina, Michael was a respected Navy member, best known for his work as a computer systems operator. He was actively involved in military operations and received several awards for his service. Annie found Michael's Navy career impressive and quickly fell in love, telling a friend that he was the man she believed was truly worthy of her affections. After a few months of dating, Annie and Michael decided to move in together, starting a family with 2 sons and a daughter. Unfortunately, their lives changed completely when a fire broke out in their apartment. Annie was out at the time, leaving Michael at home with the children. Michael, along with Jimia and Sean, escaped, but Shane, who was too young to walk, was left behind. When Annie returned, she tried to enter the burning apartment to rescue Shane but was stopped by neighbors. The loss of Shane had a profound impact on Annie, who felt that the tragedy had left an irreplaceable void in her heart. As the police investigated the fire, they struggled to determine the exact cause of the fire. The circumstances surrounding the fire aroused the police's suspicions. However, the investigation ended without anyone being held accountable. After the tragedy, Annie and her sons moved into her mother's home in Portland, while Michael focused on his work and chose to live in the barracks. A few months after the move, another disturbing event occurred near Annie's mother's home. A shed in the backyard caught fire. Police quickly tracked down the source of the fire and found a lighter engraved with the word Bramby, the name of the ship where Michael worked. This evidence made Michael the prime suspect in the arson case. However, police were unable to conclusively prove his involvement due to insufficient evidence. After the second fire, child welfare agencies in Maine assessed that Annie Tayan's sons were living in an unsafe environment. As a result, they made the difficult decision to remove Jemia and Sean from her custody and place them in the foster care system under the Department of Social Services. This decision devastated Annie as she desperately tried to regain custody of her sons. Despite her efforts, she was unsuccessful, leaving her heartbroken and separated from her sons. When Michael returned to Charleston, South Carolina, he settled into a rental apartment and rekindled his relationship with Annie. Despite their complicated past, Annie agreed to move in with him in Goose Creek, a suburb of Charleston. However, her time there changed when she discovered a photo of Michael wearing a wedding ring, indicating that he was married. When confronted about it, Michael confessed that he had been married once but had long since divorced. He explained that his ex-wife, Dawn Breeze, and their 3 children lived at his mother's house in Savannah, Georgia. Although Michael assured Annie that there was no ongoing relationship with Dawn, she felt uneasy about the information. Annie considered leaving him, but decided to stay, believing that he might be the right partner to start a family with. Unfortunately, their life together soon turned sour. As Michael's behavior toward Annie became increasingly hostile and demeaning. Annie, who was planning to return to her mother's home, discovered that she was pregnant. This news caused her to put her plans on hold because she was excited about having another child. In October 1989, just a month before she went missing, Annie gave birth to her 4th daughter, Jade. Although she understood that Jade could never replace her lost daughter, she felt that Jade had brought great joy to her life. Unfortunately, a month after Jade was born, Michael's treatment of Annie took a turn for the worse. He began to publicly insult and humiliate her. Annie shared her concerns with a friend, expressing her fear that Michael would relentlessly pursue her if she tried to leave. His controlling behavior became more intense. He isolated Annie in their apartment while he was at work by disconnecting his phone, keeping it in his bag, and carrying it with him. Annie became increasingly frightened by Michael's actions. Just 2 days before her disappearance, Annie called her close friend Katie French in a distressed state. During the call, Annie revealed her plans to leave Michael. However, Michael threatened her by saying that if she left, he would keep their daughter Jade with him, preventing Annie from seeing her daughter again. Annie was in a distressed state, crying and begging Katie to come to her and Jade's aid. Unfortunately, Katie was busy and unable to help her. Instead, she sent Annie money for a bus ticket, hoping that it would allow her to escape and return to Portland. This emotional conversation would be their last. 2 days later, on November 7, 1989, Katie attempted to contact Annie but received no response. A few days later, Michael contacted Katie to inform her that on November 6th, Annie had packed up and left without saying where she was going. Katie expected Annie to contact her from her new home. But after 2 weeks of silence, she began to worry. By Thanksgiving on November 24th, Annie had been out of contact for 20 days. Worried about her friend, Katie contacted all of Annie's friends, but no one had any information about her whereabouts. Katie attempted to report 24-year-old Annie missing to the police, but was told that, since she was not a blood relative, she could not file a formal report. As months passed without any sign of Annie, Katie finally got Michael's mother's phone number. When she called, she was shocked to learn that Annie's youngest daughter, Jade, was staying with Michael's mother. The news confirmed Katie's worst fears. She believed that Annie would never want to leave her daughter. Shortly after this disturbing news, Michael was transferred to the naval base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. Despite the situation of Annie, the mother of his child, he showed little concern for her whereabouts. Michael did not contact the police or begin searching for her. Months after Annie Tayan went missing, an official search began following a report from her mother. The investigation quickly focused on her partner, Michael Palin, who became the prime suspect. Michael claimed that on the morning of November 6th, he woke up to find Annie had left while he was babysitting his daughter. He said that the night before, Annie had expressed a desire to end their relationship. He made no attempt to find her, believing that their relationship was over and that further contact was pointless. Michael also claimed that he was unaware that Annie had been reported missing or that she had lost contact with family and friends. When police searched the couple's rented apartment, they found no evidence, no clues, traces, or suspicious items that could help the investigation. Annie Tayan's case seemed to have stalled and no large-scale search was conducted for her. It is still unclear whether she is still alive, and any possible motive for her disappearance is unknown. The only confirmed detail is that the last person reported to have seen her was her partner, Michael. For 4 long years, there were no updates or discoveries about Annie. Her close friend Katie French was the only one actively searching for her, cooperating tirelessly with the investigation. Katie spent approximately $16,000 on phone bills alone and hired a private investigator as part of her relentless quest to find Annie Tayan. She contacted various organizations in the hopes of uncovering information about Michael's past. Katie was convinced that Michael was dangerous and untrustworthy. She feared him greatly, knowing that if he discovered her involvement with the police, it could put her in danger. In 1993, Annie's case took a major turn when it was transferred to the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, NCIS, marking a major turning point in the investigation. NCIS agents began a full review of the case from the beginning. They located Michael, who was stationed at Pearl Harbor Naval Station in Hawaii. When approached by Marine Corps police officers to discuss Annie's disappearance, Michael agreed to talk, but only in the presence of his attorney. He then completely stopped cooperating with the investigation and refused to provide further information. The Coast Guard gathered every available detail about Annie's disappearance and contacted South Carolina police. They asked for help in comparing their information with the records of the unidentified bodies, noting that Annie had given birth just a month before her disappearance. Then, South Carolina police reported a case involving a dead woman who had also given birth a month before her death. They sent a sketch of the woman, which shocked Coast Guard agents who saw it. They believed they might have found Annie Tayan. The discovery revealed a horrific murder. Annie's body was found near a highway in Jasper County, South Carolina, about 100 miles from where she lived with Michael. The crime scene photos were horrifying, showing a level of violence that agents said they had rarely witnessed. Annie's face was severely damaged and her skull was broken into 124 pieces, requiring nearly 500 hours of detailed reconstruction. It was also revealed that Annie's body had been placed in a navy blue bag that had been doused with gasoline and then set on fire. The burning bag was discovered at 6 a.m. on November 7, 1989, around the same time Katie French realized Annie had stopped answering her phone calls. Annie Tayan's dental records were used to positively identify her as the unidentified woman. After Annie's body was found, Michael became the prime suspect in the murder. Coast Guard agents developed a thorough investigation plan, starting with a review of his financial transactions. They discovered that on the day Annie went missing, Michael made a credit card purchase about 25 miles south of where her burned body was found. Additionally, his phone records showed that on the morning of November 6th, he called his mother's home in Savannah twice, the first time at 4:35 a.m. and the second time at 5:17 a.m. Coast Guard agents believe that Michael killed Annie in their apartment and then moved her body to the side of the road, where he set it on fire. To advance the investigation, NCIS agents targeted Michael's ex-wife, Dawn Breeze. At the time of Annie's death, Dawn was still married to Michael and living at his mother's house in Savannah. After Annie's disappearance, Dawn divorced Michael and began moving frequently between states, as if she were trying to escape someone or something. The agents eventually discovered that she was living in Miami, Florida, in the summer of 1995, nearly 6 years after Annie's murder. They located Dawn, who had been engaging in spiritualistic activities for income. When the agents visited Dawn at her workplace to discuss Annie's disappearance, her response was surprisingly calm. She questioned the length of the conversation, expressing a desire to eat if the conversation was prolonged. This response surprised the agents, who had expected a more emotional response when Annie was mentioned. Dawn, however, remained calm throughout their conversation. During the 10-hour interrogation, Dawn's story initially matched Michael's. She said that when she visited Michael's apartment, he told her that his mistress had left him and that he planned to raise his daughter alone. However, there were discrepancies in the timeline of her visit. At one point, Dawn became quiet, looked down, and expressed a desire to tell the truth. Her subsequent speech was emotionless and tearless as she revealed what she had kept secret for 6 years. Dawn explained that one morning, Michael had called her urgently to his apartment in Charleston. There, she saw Annie's dead body on the living room floor. Michael then told Dawn to go into the bedroom to see his daughter. At the time, Dawn and Michael were still legally married and had 3 children together. Michael admitted to having an affair with Annie, which resulted in the birth of a daughter. He begged Dawn to accept the child and help him raise her. Dawn suggested that Michael, not wanting to fight for custody of Annie, had chosen murder as a simpler solution. On the night of November 5th to 6th, 1989, Michael and Annie went to bed after having an intimate moment. Annie soon fell asleep, and during this time, Michael picked up a crowbar and began to violently attack her. Shockingly, their daughter Jade was sleeping next to Annie during the attack. Michael continued to hit Annie in the head more violently, and although she tried to fight back, she eventually died of her injuries in their bed. Michael then contacted his wife Dawn and asked her to come over immediately. He placed Annie's body in a duffel bag and placed it in the trunk of his car, along with a can of gasoline. He then put Dawn and Jade in the back seat of his car and drove about 100 miles. When he found a secluded spot along the side of the road, he took Annie's body out of the trunk, doused it with gasoline, and set it on fire. Once the fire was out, he quickly got back in the car and drove Dawn and Jade back to his mother's house in Savannah. Dawn's revelations marked a major turning point in the investigation, marking the first significant piece of evidence since the discovery of Annie's remains. Police asked Dawn to make a recorded phone call to her ex-husband, Michael, to discuss Annie's murder. Dawn agreed and contacted Michael, saying she needed to have a serious conversation because Annie's body had been found. Michael's response, "No, they didn't," confirmed to police that Dawn's account was credible. During the call, Dawn mentioned that blood had been discovered in their old apartment and that NCIS was investigating them as suspects in the murder. She urged Michael to come up with an explanation for the blood. Michael responded, "Okay, we need to work together and come up with something," which did not include any direct admission of guilt. However, his tone suggested that he understood the seriousness of the situation. He did not ask unnecessary questions or deny involvement, indicating that he knew what was being discussed. This conversation further supported the theory that Annie was murdered in Michael's apartment. At the end of the conversation, Michael warned Dawn to be careful with her phone calls and assured her that they would work together to resolve the situation. NCIS agents took Dawn to the crime scene to search for any remaining evidence. To protect her identity and ensure her safety as a cooperating witness, they disguised her before arriving at the apartment. Dawn carefully described and demonstrated the location of Annie's body and a sequence of events. She pointed out a spot near the wall and baseboard where a large amount of blood had seeped into the carpet and concrete floor below. Since Michael moved out, the landlord had replaced and cleaned the carpet several times, which is why there were no visible traces of blood. However, when the police used a special chemical on the concrete floor, a large purple stain appeared, indicating the presence of protein and matching Dawn's description of where Annie's body had been. Although the blood had soaked into the concrete, NCIS still had difficulty proving with certainty that the substance was blood. Therefore, the search for more physical evidence continued. Dawn mentioned a dresser next to the bed where Annie was killed, which contained a television covered in blood from the murder. Michael had said that the television needed a thorough cleaning because of the stains. He had then thrown it away, presumably selling it rather than throwing away a working device. Given his thrifty tendencies, finding the television was difficult. However, the agents were determined to find it. At this point, Michael realized that NCIS was watching him, especially after a phone call with his ex-wife, Dawn. Realizing this, he became very wary of their surveillance. NCIS agents were concerned that Michael might attempt to escape, threaten witnesses, or possibly harm someone. During a surveillance mission, Michael attempted to escape from the police, but was quickly apprehended by the police. As a result, on October 11, 1995, he was arrested. While he was being held in a military prison on suspicion of murder, NCIS agents interviewed all the residents of the apartment complex where the murders took place in November 1989. 3 months later, their efforts finally paid off when a neighbor revealed that he had purchased a television from Michael. Amazingly, the television was still working and in his home. The police quickly confiscated the television and sent it to the FBI lab for detailed forensic analysis. This examination led to a major breakthrough. They found 11 bloodstains on the speaker, which were later determined to match Annie's DNA, providing a key piece of evidence in the murder investigation. At this point in the case, Michael's attorney announced that he was willing to plead guilty, but only if the death penalty was dropped. Although the prosecutor was not happy with this development, military law required such deals to be considered at trial. Michael admitted his guilt without showing much emotion, recounting the details of his crime. His story showed no signs of remorse or sorrow. Michael Palin was convicted and sentenced to life in prison, eligible for parole after 30 years. Although Dawn knew about her husband's crimes and kept quiet for 6 years, she avoided legal consequences because her confession to NCIS was crucial in moving the investigation forward. Annie's children, including her son and daughter, now know what happened to their biological mother and understand that she did not abandon them. Jade, Annie's daughter with Michael, has grown into a beautiful woman. In a surprising turn of events, Michael Palin was released from prison in 2013 after serving only 17 years, supposedly for good behavior. His whereabouts are currently unknown and anyone who sees him is advised to exercise caution. The case of Jason Corbett. Jason Corbett was a 39-year-old businessman from Limerick, Ireland, known for his cheerful, kind, and energetic personality. He had a twin brother named Wayne and a sister named Tracy. In 2003, when Jason was 27, he married Margaret Fitzpatrick. They soon had a son, Jack, and a daughter, Sarah, who they cherished deeply. Their family life was filled with happiness in Ireland, but that joy came to an abrupt and tragic end. In 2006, shortly after Sarah was born, Margaret, who had a long history of asthma, had a severe attack. She woke Jason up in the middle of the night, struggling to breathe. Despite Jason giving her medication and an inhaler, her condition worsened. In a panic, he called an ambulance, but sadly, Margaret passed away on the way to the hospital. After losing his wife, 30-year-old Jason Corbett, a director of a small packaging company in Ireland, was left to care for his 2-year-old son and 3-month-old daughter alone. His friends noticed his deep grief and difficulty managing the loss. A year later, Jason decided to hire a nanny and housekeeper to help with his children. He connected with Molly Martins, a 25-year-old American woman, for the position. Molly arrived in Ireland from the United States in March 2008, and Jason's longtime friend picked her up at the airport. However, the friend immediately had doubts about Molly's suitability for the job, feeling she wasn't the right fit. Molly seemed younger than her age, wearing a flashy outfit with a bright coat with a fur collar, cowboy boots, lush curls, and heavy makeup. To that friend, Molly looked more like a theater actress than a babysitter. Molly Martins grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee. She dropped out from Clemson University and decided to start a new life in Ireland. She quickly forms a close relationship with Jason's son and daughter, showing them tenderness and care. Jason's close friends soon noticed how he gradually recovered from the loss of his first wife, Margaret, he becoming more lively and engaged. Feelings developed between Jason and Molly, leading to a romantic relationship. The couple, along with Jack and Sarah, went on a vacation together. They enjoyed their time and grew closer, starting to plan their future together. 2 years later, on Valentine's Day 2010, Jason invited Molly to a cafe, where he gave her a ring and proposed. Overjoyed, Molly immediately began planning their wedding in America. She persuaded Jason to move to her home country, and he agreed. In 2011, he sold his house and transferred his job to the United States. The family settled in Davidson County, North Carolina, where Jason and Molly got married in a ceremony attended by many relatives and friends from both America and Ireland. After marrying Jason, Molly worked as a swimming instructor, but mainly focused on caring for Jason's children, Jack and Sarah. Jason held a managerial position in the United States. Although their life seemed happy at first, their marriage then began to deteriorate. This tension came to a head on August 1, 2015, when Molly's parents, Tom and Sharon Martins, visited the Corbett family home around 11 p.m. Jason greeted them in the driveway and helped with their luggage. Tom brought a baseball bat as a gift for Jack, Jason's son, who was out at a party with friends and did not receive the gift immediately. That evening, Jason, Molly, her parents, and Sarah had pizza for dinner. Jack returned home around 11 p.m., but Tom decided not to give him the baseball bat so late at night, planning to do so the next morning. After 11 p.m., the family went to bed. Molly and Jason slept in the master bedroom on the first floor, with Jack and Sarah in nearby rooms. Molly's parents stayed in the guest room on the second floor. In the early morning of August 2nd, at around 3 a.m., Tom Martins called 911. He reported that his son-in-law, Jason, had attacked Molly, and in self-defense, he hit Jason with a baseball bat. Tom urgently requested assistance, as Jason was unconscious and bleeding. The 911 dispatcher instructed Tom and Molly on performing CPR to try to revive Jason before help arrived. 10 minutes later, when police and ambulance services reached the scene, they found Molly outside near a car. She appeared distraught and in shock, though she wasn't crying. Inside the main bedroom, they found the lifeless body of 39-year-old Jason Corbett, with blood splattered on the bed, walls, and floor. Tom and Molly had blood-stained clothes, and Jason's body was marked with dried blood. Nearby, there was a bloody baseball bat, a large cobblestone, and an overturned lamp. Meanwhile, Jack and Sarah slept through the incident in their rooms. Tom and Molly admitted to being involved in Jason's death, claiming it was in self-defense, and were taken to the station for questioning. At the police station, 66 years old Tom Martins, a retired FBI agent with 30 years of experience, reported that his son-in-law, Jason, was insane and frequently tormented his daughter. Tom said that Jason was intoxicated that evening. After everyone had gone to bed, Tom was awakened by screams and loud noises coming from the first floor. He quickly got out of bed, grabbed a baseball bat, and rushed downstairs. Upon entering the main bedroom, he saw Jason clutching Molly's throat with both hands. Tom shouted at Jason to let Molly go, but Jason turned to him and replied that he would kill her. Tom claimed that his instinct to protect his daughter arose immediately. He struck Jason with the baseball bat, but Jason seemed unaffected by the blow. Jason then tried to pull Molly into the bathroom and shut the door, but Tom intervened. Jason pushed Tom, causing him to fall, and his glasses flew off. At that moment, Tom feared for his life. Jason noticed the bat on the floor and reached for it, but Molly seized a stone, shouted at him not to touch her dad, and Molly struck he on the head with all her strength. Following this, Tom picked up the baseball bat again and continued to hit Jason until he collapsed onto the floor. During the interrogation, 32 years old Molly repeatedly told the investigators the same story. She recounted that Sarah woke up in the night with night terrors, which startled Jason and made him very angry. In his anger, he attacked Molly, started strangling her, and threatened to kill her. Molly's father intervened to help her. Molly admitted to hitting her husband on the head with a heavy stone to save her father. When the police asked where she got the stone, Molly explained that it was on her bedside table. They had planned to paint the cobblestone with the children to create beautiful flower beds decorated with colorful stones. Molly couldn't remember how many times she struck her husband, only describing the incident as a real fight for her life. During the interrogation, Molly informed the investigators that she was still in pain from her husband's chokehold. They took photographs of her, capturing a red mark in the center of her neck. Later, the police compared these photos with those taken at the time of her arrest and found no red marks on her neck then. Molly admitted that the altercation with her husband had happened the day before the incident. During that fight, Jason had grabbed her arms and neck. Throughout the interrogation, she repeatedly complained of throat pain. Tom and Molly both claimed that Jason was mistreating Molly, but Jason's family disagreed. Tracy, Jason's sister, shared her observations about his marriage to Molly, noting unusual dynamics. Tracy remarked that Molly exerted significant control over Jason and she would become upset if things didn't go her way. Molly's unwillingness to engage with Jason's visiting relatives also raised concerns. Additionally, a friend of Molly's revealed that Molly had told people she was friends with Jason's first wife, Margaret, until Margaret died of cancer. This statement contradicted family accounts since it was known that Margaret had actually died of an asthma attack. Despite warnings and concerns from Jason's family and friends about Molly's unusual behavior, the couple went ahead with the wedding. This marked the start of a complicated and troubled marriage. At first, Molly and Jason's relationship seemed happy, with Molly developing a strong connection with Jason's children, Jack and Sarah, treating them like her own. However, as their first wedding anniversary approached in 2012, Jason mentioned wanting to move back to Ireland due to feeling unhappy living abroad. This marked the beginning of problems in their relationship. While Jack and Sarah called Molly their mother, Jason was hesitant about Molly adopting them legally. He wanted his children to preserve the memory of their biological mother, Margaret. During this period, Molly's behavior began to change noticeably. Jason became increasingly concerned about her mental health, suspecting that she might have a psychological disorder. He noticed a marked contrast between her initially kind character and her later behavior. He perceived she is more manipulative and controlling. Molly began to isolate Jason from his family and would often limit his phone conversations with them to just a few seconds. After the unexpected death of Margaret, Jason named his sister, Tracy, as the legal guardian for his children, Jack and Sarah, in case he passed away. Tracy knew that if anything happened to Jason, Molly would fiercely challenge the custody of the children. When Jason died, Tracy quickly went to North Carolina to apply for custody. Jack and Sarah expected to have a legal battle with Molly, who also wants custody of the child. During their troubled marriage, Molly consulted a lawyer to understand her rights regarding Jason's children if they divorced. Her lawyer advised her to document their disputes and gather evidence against Jason. As a result, Molly secretly recorded their conversations. In these recordings, Molly seemed disengaged, often ignoring Jason's repeated questions as he raised his voice. A close friend of Molly revealed that, although Molly rarely talked about her marital problems, she began expressing negative feelings about Jason after his death. Molly confided in her friend that Jason was controlling and abusive, claiming he forced her into intimate acts, verbally abused her, and treated her increasingly worse over time. Despite these claims, Molly did not report these incidents to the authorities. For days after Jason's tragic death, his children, Jack, 10, and Sarah, 8, were interviewed by a child welfare professional. During the interview, they discussed Molly and Jason's relationship. They said that their mother, Molly, was careful not to wake their father, Jason, as she was worried it might make him angry. Jack mentioned a cobblestone that was on the bedside table, explaining that they had brought it inside to protect it from the rain and planned to decorate it later. Regarding their parents' interactions, both Jack and Sarah described incidents where they saw their father physically attacking Molly. They recounted situations where Jason hit and pushed Molly and often snapped at her over trivial matters. After these revelations, Jack and Sarah were temporarily placed in the care of their biological aunt, Tracy. She traveled from Ireland and stayed at a hotel in North Carolina during the custody battle over Jack and Sarah. The autopsy of Jason revealed the grim details of his death. He died from a traumatic brain injury. Jason had been struck about 12 times on the head with both a baseball bat and a brick. These blows were concentrated in the same parts, causing severe tearing of his scalp from his skull and fracturing his skull. Notably, the medical examiner concluded that at least one of these strikes occurred after Jason had already died. The toxicology report provided further details, showing slightly higher than normal levels of alcohol in Jason's blood. Additionally, traces of trazodone, an antidepressant often prescribed for insomnia, were found in his body. Jason was buried in his hometown of Limerick, Ireland, next to his first wife, Margaret. Their shared tombstone features a wedding photo, symbolizing their lives and the bond they had. 16 days after Jason's death, his sister Tracy took his children, Jack and Sarah, to Ireland, away from their stepmother, Molly. She was shocked and devastated to learn that Jack and Sarah were in another country. She tried contacting them through phone calls and social media posts, hoping the messages would get through to the children. Molly and Tom consistently claimed that their actions against Jason were in self-defense, while the investigation into Jason's death continued. Tracy, however, suspected they had a different motive. Tracy believes that Molly knows Jason plans to leave her and that he will take the children with him. Tracy speculated that on the night of the incident, Jason told Molly about his decision, and Molly, fearing being left alone, reacted violently. In Ireland, Jack and Sarah received psychological support and slowly adapted to their new surroundings. 9 months after their father's tragic death, Jack and Sarah admitted that they had been forced to lie about domestic violence occurring at home. They revealed that Molly had manipulated them into making up stories about their father's behavior, threatening to cut off contact with them if they didn't comply. Contrary to Jack and Sarah's earlier claims, they clarified that their father had never been abusive towards Molly. During the investigation, detectives discovered Molly's past relationship with her ex-partner, Keith Megan. He shared many details about her earlier life. Keith and Molly met through a dating website and they felt affection for each other at first sight. They moved in together after just 6 weeks. Keith admired Molly's independence, cheerfulness, lightheartedness, and personality. Molly eventually told him about her struggle with bipolar disorder. Keith was not overly concerned about this, as Molly was on medication and generally well, except for some behavioral changes when she missed her doses. She wasn't violent or prone to outbursts, but did have moments when, for example, she would insist that Keith not leave during quarrel. Molly would often spend long periods in the bathtub and then sit on the cold floor crying. Despite these challenges, they continued their relationship without plans to have children. Molly informed Keith that she was taking birth control pills, but then unexpectedly announced that she was pregnant. At this point, Keith, who was the family's only source of income, was already facing financial difficulties and felt unprepared for parenthood. When he found an unopened pack of contraceptives in Molly's wardrobe, he realized she had deceived him. Despite this, Keith proposed to Molly, who accepted happily. Molly continued taking her antidepressants and other medications, sometimes up to 16 pills a day, which worried Keith about the health of their unborn child. Molly once had a dream about losing the baby, and tragically, the next day, the hospital confirmed that the fetus had died. This incident further strained their relationship. Molly fell into deep mourning and was diagnosed with severe depression, as noted in her medical records. Her parents consoled her a lot, at the same time. They have a disdainful view of Keith, considering him a villain. In early 2008, Molly told Keith about her plan to go to Europe to work as a nanny. In March, she packed her things and left the apartment she shared with him. 10 days later, Molly called Keith to let him know she was in Ireland, had found a job, and everything was going well. After that, they never spoke or saw each other again. In October 2015, Keith received an email from a detective in North Carolina, where he learned about the unfortunate incident that had occurred. It turned out Molly had kept her relationship with Jason, engagement, and moved to another country a secret from everyone. Keith admitted that when he saw an interview of Tom and Molly, in which they described Jason as evil and scary, nevertheless, Keith did not find their story convincing and thought their expressions were fake. In January 2016, 6 months after Jason's death, Tom and Molly were unexpectedly charged with second-degree murder. By July 2017, 2 years after the incident, the father and daughter went to trial together. They argued that they acted in self-defense when Jason was killed. During the trial, Tom Martins said he did what any father would do: he defended his daughter. He felt it was a life-or-death situation and did everything he could to keep Molly and himself safe. Tom admitted to hitting Jason with a bat, and he stopping only when he felt Jason was no longer a threat. The prosecution argued that the force of the blows suggested strong hostility, not just an act of self-defense. An expert who analyzed the bloodstains deduced that some blows occurred when Jason's head was 30 to 50 centimeters from the ground, suggesting that Tom continued hitting him even when he was already down and no longer posed a danger. The bloodstains on the lower part of Molly's pajamas indicated her proximity to Jason during these blows. A long, light-colored hair, possibly Molly's, was found in Jason's hand, but it was not analyzed. The autopsy revealed defensive injuries on Jason's left hand, but none on his right, which he might have used to grab Molly by the neck. During the trial, Lieutenant Frank Young, responsible for documenting injuries on Tom and Molly on the night of the incident, testified. He recounted seeing Molly inflict injuries on her neck. He repeatedly told her to stop and noticed that besides the dried blood on her cheek, forehead, and hair, there were no other injuries. Similarly, Tom did not have any injuries on the front of his shirt, although there was blood on his watch dial, under his fingernails, and his glasses were unbroken. Paramedic Amanda Hackworth also testified that when she arrived and examined Jason's body, His torso was already cold with dried blood patches. This conflicted with Molly's claim that they had immediately called 911 after Jason lost consciousness and collapsed. The trial revealed that Jason had a life insurance policy, with Molly as the beneficiary. It was also disclosed that Jason often sent money to Molly's parents. For instance, in 2011, he sent $50,000 to Tom, supposedly for wedding expenses. During the trial, a neighbor testified that he spent the evening with Jason, drinking beer from about 3:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m., and described Jason as very relaxed. He saw Tom and his wife arrive at the Jason residence, where Jason greeted them and helped carry heavy bags from their car into the house. His interactions with his in-laws were also described as calm. The court heard testimony from a nurse who had met with the couple before the tragic. She stated that she prescribed trazodone to Molly just days before the incident. On July 30th, 2015, Jason visited the hospital, expressing concerns about his frequent dizziness, tension, and sudden anger. After 9 days of testimonies, discussions, and reviewing crime scene photos, the jury delivered a verdict in just 3 hours. Molly and her father, Tom Martins, were found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to 20 and 25 years in prison, respectively. The case is not completely over. Although justice has been served to the guilty party, just an hour after the jury delivered its verdict, a juror accidentally revealed outside the court that they had discussed Jason's case before the formal deliberation period, which is a significant violation of legal protocol. Following this revelation, the defense quickly requested to overturn the conviction, citing the jurors' misconduct. However, the trial judge rejected this request. A year later, the defense appealed to the appellate court, pointing out several investigative errors. One issue was the blood stains on Tom's shorts. The prosecution suggested these stains, assumed to be Jason's blood but never tested, indicated Tom was standing over Jason during the assault. The prosecutor argued that testing every blood spot was impractical and unnecessary. The defense also highlighted the importance of Jack and Sarah's initial statements. Jack and Sarah had initially claimed their father was abusive towards Molly and expressed fear of him. The defense argued that the siblings later retracted their statements, admitting they lied due to pressure from professionals to change their testimony. On February 4, 2020, the North Carolina Court of Appeals decided that Tom Martins and Molly should receive a new trial. This decision was later upheld by the North Carolina Supreme Court. As a result, both were released on a $200,000 bond while awaiting the new trial. They were required to surrender their passports and were prohibited from any contact with Jack and Sarah. Currently, Jason Corbett's case has been moved to Forsyth County, North Carolina, to continue with the legal proceedings. The case of Catherine Pileggi. Ronald Vinci was born on August 16, 1940, in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and he showed a passion for business from an early age. In his 20s, he started his first business by renting a space on the Pacific Coast in San Diego to sell Honda motorcycles. His small shop eventually grew into one of the largest Honda dealerships in California. Ronald's success continued as he opened several more car dealerships, steadily increasing his earnings. People who worked for him often described him as determined and strong-willed, as well as a demanding employer. Ronald was previously married to a woman named Pamela, and they had a son named Carrie. Their marriage lasted for several years, but eventually ended in divorce. After the divorce, he started living a luxurious lifestyle, spent all money on luxury items. He passionate about collecting airplanes and helicopters, and even purchased a large hangar to store his collection. Ronald lived in a large house in Rancho Santa Fe, California. He tried very hard to get permission from the county commission to build a helipad on his land, even though his neighbors were against it. This has allowed him to could easily travel to work by helicopter directly from his home. He also had helicopter pads on the roofs of his car dealerships, which made his helicopter travel even more convenient. In 1990, 50 years old, Ronald Vinci met 34 years old, Catherine Pileggi in a surprising setting, on a plane. Catherine was working as a flight attendant at the time. She grew up in a rural part of Georgia. As a young woman, she participated in beauty pageants, where she won people over with her charm and bright smile. Her beauty and friendly nature attracted many admirers. After completing her studies, Catherine worked for many years as a laboratory technician at a veterans hospital. However, she always wanted more from life and had aspirations beyond her job. In 1980, Catherine made a major career shift by leaving her job at the hospital to become a flight attendant with Delta Airlines, where she earned $20,000 a year. She enjoyed her new role, which involved attending to passengers and serving meals. Catherine has some helpful tips, like using coffee grounds to eliminate odors and a trick for cleaning stains off airplane seats. In 1990, 10 years after beginning her career as a flight attendant, Catherine had a fateful encounter on a flight. She met Ronald Vinci, a millionaire. He was immediately attracted to her charm and radiant smile. Despite the age difference of up to 14 years, this couple started dating. Catherine then left her job as a flight attendant and moved into Ronald's luxurious house in California. Together, they shared a passion for traveling, with Aspen, Colorado, being one of their favorite getaway destinations. Ronald and Catherine were together for 10 years, but he never proposed to her. Eventually, they broke up, and Catherine moved to Florida to find a new partner and a new beginning. In April 2001, at 45 years old, she started dating 63 years old Dilio Carano, a financially successful insurance agent. They met through friends. Catherine shared with Dilio her past unhappy relationship with Ronald, described it as a period of suffering and unhappiness. He insulted her, he also heavy drinking, and openly discussed his extramarital affairs with other women. She had endured this for 10 years, hoping Ronald would propose, but he never did. Unlike Ronald, Dilio quickly proposed to Catherine, and they got married in May 2001, just 1 month after meeting. Catherine was happy with the marriage new, and after their wedding, Dilio and Catherine moved in together in Miami Beach, Florida. Dilio describes that when she first got married, Catherine had a very gentle, calm personality, spoke little and ate very moderately. She also had a deep fear of water. She couldn't bathe in the ocean or river and would experience extreme anxiety when entering the water. A few months into their marriage, Dilio noticed a significant change in Catherine's behavior. She increasingly asked him for money more, asking for money to buy clothes and gifts, and often compared him to her friends' generous husbands. Dilio estimated that Catherine was taking about $55,000 from him each month. She claimed it was for educational expenses but never showed any receipts or proof. After enduring this financial burden for a few months, Dilio realized he had rushed into the marriage and wanted a divorce. With no children or shared property, the separation was relatively uncomplicated. Court documents indicated that Dilio had a net worth of $4.5 million, whereas Catherine had only $8,000 in her accounts. As Catherine was preparing to leave Dilio's house, she felt sad and hopeless, expressing that she didn't see the point of living, couldn't succeed in anything, and that her life had no meaning. 2005 saw millionaire Ronald make a big change in his life by moving to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. His friends persuaded him that Florida was appealing due to its good weather and low taxes. By then, Ronald had already sold his car dealerships and amassed a lot of wealth. In Fort Lauderdale, he purchased a luxurious fourth-floor apartment and started enjoying his new home. In the same year, Ronald rekindled his relationship with Catherine, a flight attendant he had dated before. Catherine then moved into Ronald's apartment. Interestingly, Catherine's former husband, Dilio, also lived in the same building, but 30 floors below. Dilio couldn't understand why Catherine had come back with the millionaire she had once called a monster. As Ronald and Catherine's relationship progressed, she dreamed of marrying he. Neither Ronald or Catherine need to go to work, led a life of leisure. Over time, Ronald and Catherine's differences became more evident. Ronald was obese and enjoyed indulging in rich foods, while Catherine ate sparingly and weighed only 42 kilograms. Ronald loved lively parties, whereas Catherine preferred staying at home, absorbed in crime stories. She rarely wore dresses, choosing shorts and sneakers for her daily wear. She and Ronald often traveled together, crossing the sea by boat and visiting the Caribbean islands by air. Catherine's diary shows that she was very afraid of the sea and describes how Ronald always encouraged her to overcome this phobia. Her decision to join him on these expeditions, despite her fears, proving that Ronald is very good at convincing her to do what he wants, and he can also be very firm when telling her to face her own worries. Despite his substantial wealth, but Ronald preferred socializing with friends at affordable bars along the Fort Lauderdale waterfront, where he would often order inexpensive tacos and potent drinks. He was known for being the center of attention, frequently flirting with women, but also jokingly acknowledging that his charm had worn off. The couple's home often hosted gatherings. On these occasions, Ronald would drink a lot of wine and speak more frankly. He would sometimes insult Catherine in front of their friends, claiming she owed everything to him. However, Catherine remained composed and quietly meeting Ronald's demands by serving drinks, snacks, and attending to his friends. For 5 years, the millionaire Ronald hesitated to propose to Catherine. By 2010, Ronald began telling friends he wanted to end their relationship and find a younger partner. In early 2011, Ronald was hospitalized with severe intestinal issues, likely due to long-term alcohol abuse. Doctors attributed his illness to his drinking habits, but Ronald noted a recent change in the taste of his food. A friend jokingly suggested, "Maybe Catherine tried to poison you." Ronald dismissed the joke without much thought. In reality, he had been neglecting his health, with excessive drinking and taking too many pills in an attempt to relax and sleep better, which was affecting his well-being. In June 2011, Ronald bought a new waterfront home in Fort Lauderdale, valued at $3 million, conveniently located near where his yacht was docked. At 70 years old, Ronald planned to enjoy his remaining years in this comfortable house. He anticipated visits from his only son, Carrie, and his grandson. Ronald often joked about Carrie's job as a waiter, humorously suggesting that Carrie was impatiently waiting for his passing. The gardener of Ronald called 911 on the afternoon of June 28, 2011, to report an incident involving his employer, Ronald. When the police arrived, they found the lifeless body of Ronald in a guest room. Shockingly, his body had been carefully wrapped in plastic bags, tightly sealed with tape, and placed in a sleeping bag. Inside this sleeping bag were also soiled sheets, and on them was a substance that looked like wet dirt, which was later identified as coffee grounds. Upon further investigation, a slashed mattress was discovered under the blanket on the bed. The gardener informed the police that, according to Catherine, Ronald had fallen down the stairs, suffered a head injury, and subsequently died. However, the officers suspected that his death was not accidental. During the interrogation, the gardener shockingly narrated the incident leading up to the discovery of Ronald's lifeless body. According to his testimony, Catherine had called him late at night, urgently asking him to go to Ronald's residence. Upon arriving in the morning, he encountered the eerie scene of Ronald's lifeless body, tightly wrapped in a sleeping bag in one of the guest rooms. Catherine, upset and crying, begged the gardener to help her bury Ronald. She explained that Ronald had always wanted to be buried at sea after he died. To fulfill this wish, she bought a blue container for Ronald's body, planning to take it out to sea on his yacht. Catherine had already brought the container home and put it in the garage before the gardener informed the authorities. After a detailed examination, the medical examiner uncovered gruesome details. Ronald Vinci, aged 70, was found with 9 stab wounds to his chest and neck, evidence of hammer blows to his head, and a fatal gunshot wound to the head. On the evening of June 27th, Ronald's friends visited his home. Catherine prepared the meal, and he served drinks. During the meet, Ronald mentioned that his passport and one of his pistols were missing. At dinner, Ronald complained that the food tasted unusually bitter. Surprisingly, Ronald, who was known for staying up late, said he wasn't feeling well and went to bed as early as 7:30 p.m. His friends found his early bedtime unusual and eventually left his house. Catherine, 54, was questioned a few hours later and gave a detailed confession. She explained that around 1 a.m. on June 28, a drunken Ronald woke up and started verbally insulting her. The situation got worse, and then he chased her down the stairs, stumbled, and fell, hitting his head hard. Catherine said she helped him up and took him to a guest bedroom on the first floor. Then she cleaned the blood stains on the stairs. A few hours later, she checked on Ronald in the guest bedroom and found him asleep with a loaded gun on the nightstand. Fearing Ronald meant to kill her, Catherine, in a state of panic and desperation, grabbed the gun and fatally shot him in the head. During the interrogation, Catherine admitted that she had been really scared and angrier than she had ever been, feeling as if her soul had left her body. After the shooting, she continued to inflict numerous additional wounds on Ronald with a knife and a hammer. Then, she wrapped his body in a bag and attempted to hide the evidence. She called the gardener, realizing she couldn't get rid of the body by herself. Surveillance camera photos showed Catherine buying a large blue container at a hardware store after the murder, intending to use it to dispose of Ronald's body in the ocean. Furthermore, a gun matching the one used to shoot Ronald was found in Catherine's car, with her fingerprints on it. Her Bentley also contained a knife, cut-up pieces of a mattress, clothing, and rubber gloves, all stained with Ronald's blood. Catherine was charged with first-degree murder and was arrested and detained. It was revealed that a month before the murder, in May, Catherine was involved in a legal issue. Her sister had accused her of borrowing money and refusing to pay it back. Catherine claimed the money was a gift and refused to return it. On May 17th, the court ruled in favor of Catherine in this dispute. Ronald's neighbors reported hearing screams from the Ronald house on the night of the crime. Additionally, a witness saw a white car with a large trailer near home in the early morning, which belonged to the gardener. Ronald's friends mentioned that he had wanted to end his relationship with Catherine for some time. The couple had not been intimate for months and even slept in separate rooms in their large house. Just weeks before the tragedy, Ronald tried to give Catherine $1 million through one of his employees, asking her to leave his house permanently. Prosecutors believed that Catherine's main motive was the fear of losing her wealthy partner. However, Catherine's defense claimed that she had been a victim of severe abuse during her relationship with Ronald and acted in self-defense. Questions were raised about why Catherine didn't report to the police right away, why she didn't tell the truth, and why she stayed with him for years despite the alleged abuse. In court, some of Catherine's relatives supported her, and a court psychiatrist noted signs of domestic violence. However, none of Ronald's close friends could verify any abuse in their relationship. They described Catherine as calm and mentioned she never complained about her life. During the trial, Catherine made a startling accusation, claiming Ronald was responsible for the sudden death of her younger sister Angela in December 2009, 3 years earlier. Catherine, Ronald, and Angela went on a Caribbean Sea cruise. Angela, who had been battling substance abuse, drank too much at a party and became very ill, suffering from intense convulsions. Catherine tried to save her sister by giving her artificial respiration, but sadly, Angela's heart stopped, and she passed away. It was later revealed that Ronald had given Angela some pills on the cruise's first evening, supposedly to help her relax. Catherine strongly believed these pills contributed to her sister's death. In 2014, a jury found Catherine Pileggi guilty of murdering Ronald Vinci, and she was sentenced to 25 years in prison. She is currently serving her sentence at the LEL Correctional Institution in Marin County, Florida, with a potential release date set for January 2034, when she will be 77 years old. Ronald, a successful and wealthy man, experienced a tragic end because of his ill-fated relationship with Catherine, a quiet and unassuming flight attendant. Despite his many wise decisions in life, but this relationship proved to be a fatal mistake for the millionaire. The case of Jessica Hiringa. Jessica Lynn Hiringa was born on July 16, 1987, and lived in Norton Shores, Michigan. She grew up in a modest family with her sister. At the age of 22, she became a mother to a son named Zahn, with her long-term partner, Dakota Quayle Dyer. By 2013, Jessica and Dakota were still together, residing in a rented home. At 25, Jessica worked at an Exxon gas station in Norton Shores, close to Lake Michigan. As a manager, she was known for her friendly demeanor and received positive feedback from customers. To support her beloved 3-year-old son, she often took on extra hours. Jessica's diary revealed her desire to advance her career. She wanted to study accounting in college, but financial limitations made this difficult. Dakota was unable to fully support the family, which led to frequent arguments and strife in their relationship. Although they were engaged, their marriage plans were repeatedly postponed for various reasons. On the evening of April 26, 2013, Jessica was working her regular shift at the Exxon gas station. Her day began as usual with a shopping trip to a nearby store around 3 p.m., followed by a drive to the gas station. She arrived at approximately 4:35 p.m., parked her car, and started her night shift, which was scheduled to end at 11:30 p.m. Jessica was the only employee working that night. At 11:14 p.m., a customer called emergency services to report what he had encountered at the Exxon station. He had entered the store to pay for his gas with cash but found it empty. He told the 911 dispatcher that he wasn't sure what was happening, but no one was at the station. He mentioned that the door was open and unlocked, the lights were on, but there was no one to process his payment. He added that only his car and another vehicle were outside and questioned why no one was there, saying it looked very strange. The police arrived at the Exxon gas station within 10 minutes of the 911 call. Upon inspecting the area, both inside and outside, they found no signs of a struggle. Everything appeared orderly. Jessica's coat and purse, which contained $400, car keys, and house keys, were located in the back room. A single drop of blood, later confirmed to be Jessica's, was found near the back door of the storage area. Additionally, a cap from a Walther P22 semi-automatic pistol's laser sight and 2 batteries, likely for a watch, were discovered on the floor. The cash register was undisturbed, with all the cash intact, and the last recorded transaction occurred at 10:52 p.m. for a lighter. The gas station did not have any interior surveillance cameras. Next to the cash register was Jessica's pack of cigarettes, indicating she had likely stepped away briefly but intended to return. Her locked car was parked outside, yet there was no sign of Jessica. She had disappeared without explanation. After finding the gas station unattended, the police contacted the owner to inform her of the situation. The owner then reached out to another nearby manager, asking her to secure the station. The police also informed Jessica's family about her disappearance. Concerned, her parents called her friends to gather information about her whereabouts. One friend remembered being at the gas station between 8 and 9 p.m. that evening and noted that everything seemed normal at that time. Shortly after, another employee arrived to close the station. This employee mentioned that around 11 p.m., She and her boyfriend were riding by on a motorcycle when they saw a silver Chrysler Town and Country minivan parked near the rear service door with its back door open. Suspecting that Jessica might be connected to a theft at the station, they decided to wait and observe what happened next. The manager saw a young man with messy wavy hair near a minivan, wearing an orange sweatshirt. She noticed him opening and closing the back door of the vehicle several times before he drove away. Police reviewed surveillance footage from nearby buildings and found a video of a silver Chrysler passing the Exxon gas station at 11:02 p.m. A store employee, Christian, told the police that he had seen the man in the minivan talking to Jessica. At first, Christian thought the stranger was just flirting with Jessica because she was attractive. He recalled seeing Jessica outside while the man asked her why she wasn't inside the minivan. Both Christian and another colleague of Jessica's, who also saw the man by the minivan, helped create a composite sketch of him. The sketch showed him as a light-skinned young man with dark wavy hair, a stocky build, and around 1.82 meters tall. The sketch was released 3 days after Jessica disappeared. Although the police received many calls in response, none of the information led to significant discoveries. The high number of silver Chrysler minivans in the United States was a major challenge for the investigation. In Michigan, for example, there were about 15,000 of these vehicles registered. This made it extremely difficult to identify the specific driver of the minivan associated with Jessica's disappearance, due to the large number of identical models on the road. Jessica's boyfriend, Dakota, was initially considered a suspect in her disappearance. He admitted that they often argued but insisted he never harmed her physically. Dakota cooperated fully with the investigation, telling police that he was at home with their 3-year-old son when Jessica went missing. He also stated that he didn't have a car, so he couldn't have driven to her workplace. After detectives checked his phone records, which corroborated his alibi, he was ruled out as a suspect. The investigation found that Jessica had many admirers because of her friendly and outgoing nature, which sometimes caused misunderstandings. One admirer, Jess Emmerman, is a 37-year-old married plumber who visited Jessica at the gas station around 9:30 p.m. on the night she disappeared. He expressed his love for her and said he would divorce his wife for her, but Jessica rejected his proposal. After leaving the gas station, Jess called his wife, and they talked for about 50 minutes before he went home. After being questioned, undergoing a polygraph test, and having his wife interviewed, Jess Emmerman was ruled out as a suspect. Rob Fallett, the brother of the Exxon gas station manager, became the next suspect in the investigation. He stated that he visited the gas station around 9 p.m. on the night Jessica disappeared. When he saw Jessica, he noticed she looked upset and asked her how she was feeling. Jessica shared that she was having family issues. Rob offered her the option to stay with him, but she turned it down. After spending a little time at the station and making a purchase, Rob went to the lake for a night fishing trip. Detectives reviewed his phone records for that evening, which supported his story of leaving the gas station to go fishing. As a result, Rob Fallett was cleared as a suspect. Search and rescue operations for Jessica were initiated and included the use of helicopters, trained dogs, and thorough searches of homes, businesses, wooded areas, and Lake Michigan. Despite these extensive efforts, no clues were discovered, resulting in a deadlock in the investigation. Nearly a year later, in February 2014, a similar incident occurred in Michigan. A small, blonde woman wearing glasses was attacked by a man while walking home late at night. She was kidnapped, taken to his apartment, and assaulted. Although he threatened her life, he eventually released her after several hours. That man was Brad Allen Mason, a 42-year-old man, was quickly found by the police but tried to resist arrest by wielding a fake gun. This led to him being shot and killed by the police. Brad had a criminal background that included a kidnapping conviction in 2004 and an arrest for indecent exposure in 2011. Coincidentally, in 2014, he lived in a dormitory across from the Exxon gas station where Jessica worked. However, investigators did not find any evidence connecting Brad to Jessica's disappearance. 2 years after Jessica vanished, in 2016, another alarming event involving a young woman took place. One night, while returning home from a friend's party, she found herself lost on a dimly lit street. A man driving a silver minivan stopped and asked if she needed help, offering her a ride, which she declined. Instead, she asked to use his phone, and he agreed, but only if she got into the minivan. Once she entered, he locked the doors, claimed his phone was dead, and pulled out a gun, telling her to be quiet. As he drove away, she started to feel ill and asked him to open the window. Seizing the chance, she jumped out of the moving vehicle and ran to a nearby house while he drove off quickly. The victim quickly called the police and provided a description of her kidnapper. The police then used surveillance footage to trace the license plate of a silver Chrysler Town and Country, identifying the driver as 46-year-old Jeffrey Willis. Jeffrey, a factory worker, lived a quiet and simple life and had no previous legal troubles. When the police found him in his minivan, they discovered a Walther P.22 semi-automatic pistol. This gun was linked to a colleague of Jeffrey who had reported her laser-sighted pistol stolen earlier. Jeffrey was arrested and taken into custody. During a search of his home, investigators found a box filled with various items, such as handcuffs, chains, ropes, gags, a vibrator, a video camera, and a bullet that fits a Walther P.22 firearm. Inside the box, they also discovered insulin syringes filled with an unknown liquid, sedatives, Viagra, lubricant, disposable gloves, and a diagram of a woman's anatomy indicating injection sites. On his computer, there were numerous disturbing videos showing abduction scenes involving young women. Additionally, a hidden hard drive located in a ventilation duct contained footage that Jeffrey had secretly recorded of his female neighbors while they were swimming. A folder labeled Victims was found on the computer, containing 2 subfolders, one for a missing woman named Jessica and another for a murdered woman named Rebecca. Rebecca Blech, 36 years old, was tragically murdered on June 29, 2014, about a year after Jessica disappeared. This incident occurred just 20 minutes from Jessica's workplace at the Exxon gas station. Rebecca had gone out for a run in the evening but did not return home. Neighbors found her lying on the road with her clothes in disarray, initially leading to the assumption that she had been hit by a car. Despite being unconscious, she still had a pulse when discovered. Emergency services were summoned, but she died before reaching hospital. Autopsy findings indicated that she had died from 3 gunshot wounds to her back and head, and there were also multiple bruises on her wrists and legs. At the time of her death, the suspect was still free. However, 2 years after Jeffrey was arrested, evidence connected Rebecca's murder to a gun found in his minivan. Jeffrey denied any involvement. Prosecutors suggested that Jeffrey had tried to abduct Rebecca and take her to his home. When she fought back, he allegedly shot her and then ran away. Forensic analysis revealed Rebecca's DNA on a glove found at Jeffrey's home. Jeffrey was convicted of Rebecca Blech's murder and sentenced to life in prison. While serving his sentence, Jeffrey faced additional charges for the kidnapping of Jessica. He consistently denied any involvement in her disappearance. However, his phone records revealed that on the night Jessica went missing, he was at the Exxon gas station where she was last seen. After that, he drove to his deceased grandfather's house, which was about 13 minutes away from the station. When the police arrived at his grandfather's home, they found the front door heavily secured. After forcing it open, they discovered various cleaning products, powders, and bleaches in the basement. The manufacture dates on these items were from early 2013, coinciding with the time of Jessica's disappearance. On April 27, 2013, the day after Jessica disappeared, Jeffrey's colleagues noticed he was missing from work, which was unusual for him. When he returned to the factory a few days later, he had noticeable deep scratches on his face and hands, raising suspicions among his co-workers. Additionally, a woman who visited the gas station on April 25th, the day before Jessica went missing, contacted the police. She had arrived late at night and expressed her concern to Jessica about being there alone at that hour. Jessica seemed anxious and scared, acknowledging the woman's concern with a nod. At that moment, a man inside the gas station reassured the visitor, saying, "Don't worry, she has customers who look after her," before leaving the station shortly after. The worried visitor remained in her car outside the workplace until Jessica finished her shift and left for home. Unfortunately, Jessica went missing the next day. In 2016, a witness from the gas station identified Jeffrey, confirming they had seen him there. Investigators discovered that Jeffrey had visited the Exxon gas station and interacted with Jessica at least 15 times. Meanwhile, Kevin Bloom, Jeffrey's cousin and a prison guard, was arrested. His inconsistent statements during questioning ultimately led to a confession. He revealed details about Rebecca Bletch's death that had not been made public and admitted to helping Jeffrey hide Jessica's body. On April 27th, the day after Jessica was kidnapped, Jeffrey invited Kevin to a party at his house. When Kevin arrived at Jeffrey's late grandfather's home, he saw Jessica for the first time, lying on the floor, bound and dead. The cousins wrapped her body in a sheet, put it in a car, and drove to a forest where Jeffrey had already dug a grave. They buried her there and then went back home. Later, when Kevin took the police to the forest to show them where Jessica was buried, he spent a long time searching the area but could not find the exact spot where they had buried her. The trial of Jeffrey Willis has started. Although Jessica's body has not been found, the prosecution has presented significant evidence to charge him with her kidnapping and murder. They argue that Jeffrey stalked Jessica for a long time. On the night of April 26, 2013, he allegedly parked near the service entrance of a gas station, entered the building, and hit Jessica on the head with his gun. During this attack, it said that the cover of the gun's laser sight fell off, and Jessica's blood was left on the floor. Jeffrey then allegedly dragged her out through a service exit, put her in the back seat of his car, and drove her to his late grandfather's house, where he committed further horrific acts. An analysis of Jeffrey's electronic devices uncovered that he had saved photographs and articles related to the search for Jessica. As the investigation progressed, it was revealed that Jeffrey had used a password that included Jessica's initials and the date April 27, 2013, which is believed to be the date of her death, likely occurring the day after her disappearance. Despite these findings, Jeffrey maintained his innocence, claiming he was at home on the night of the kidnapping. His lawyers contended that the prosecution lacked direct evidence connecting him to the crime, pointing out that no DNA evidence belonging to Jessica was found in Jeffrey's home or vehicle. Jeffrey's defense team, after hearing from Dakota about Jessica's severe substance abuse issues prior to her disappearance, proposed that her kidnapping could be related to illegal drug trafficking. Jeffrey was convicted of murdering Jessica and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. During the trial, he showed no remorse or empathy. His cousin, Kevin Bloom, was convicted of helping to dispose of Jessica's body and received a 2-year prison sentence, followed by 5 years of probation. Additionally, he faced suspension from his job in the prison system. It has been 10 years since Jessica disappeared, and her remains have never been found. Following this tragic event, a custody dispute arose over Jessica's son, Zahn, between her sister and Dakota, Jessica's partner. In the end, Zahn is being raised by Jessica's biological family. Furthermore, Jessica's parents have played a key role in pushing for new laws. Their advocacy resulted in a law that requires gas stations to install surveillance cameras at night, with the goal of preventing similar tragedies in the future. The case of Eurydice Dixon. Eurydice Jane Dixon was born on November 10, 1995, in Melbourne, Australia, and grew up in a close-knit family. When she was 6, her younger sister was born. Sadly, a year later, their mother passed away due to severe substance dependence, leaving their father, Jeremy Dixon, as the sole caregiver for his daughters. He worked hard to provide for them, and the family lived a modest life in a small top-floor apartment in a 3-story building. Neighbors remembered Eurydice as a quiet and polite girl. She had a deep passion for the arts, studying dramaturgy at Deakin University and participating in a theater troupe. Eurydice excelled as an actress, comedian, and writer, creating her own scripts for performances. Her love for drama was clear, and like many comedians, she enjoyed challenging societal norms, a quality that consistently resonated in her work. In 2018, at just 22 years old, Eurydice Dixon made a notable impact at the International Comedy Festival in Melbourne with her solo stand-up show, At Home I Feel Like a Tourist. Her performance captivated the audience, generating loud laughter with her daring humor. Eurydice approached comedy fearlessly, tackling complex and challenging topics in front of a crowd. However, some of her jokes did not resonate with younger audience members. As a feminist, she boldly infused her values into her comedy, often focusing on women's issues and social justice in her performances. Her friends believed she had a bright future in comedy, recognizing her as a promising talent. Colleagues described her as introverted and quiet but exceptionally intelligent for her age. Both friends and colleagues agreed that Eurydice had a true gift for comedy. Eurydice often performed for free at bars to gain experience, build her fan base, learn how to engage an audience, and improve her skills. On Tuesday, June 12, 2018, she performed at a local bar just 3 miles from her home. That night, as she often did, she humorously addressed issues of gender equality and her ongoing concerns. Sometimes I wonder if I'll wake up in a world where everyone is enslaved. You know, just typical girl jokes, right? She joked during her final act. She also whimsically discussed the idea of robots taking over the world, expressing a hope that by that time, humanity would no longer exist. She noted that a world ruled by robots wouldn't be so bad, as it would mean everyone, regardless of gender, would be equally subjected to robot control. After her performance, Eurydice met her boyfriend, Tony Magnuson, in the audience. They enjoyed a soda together at the bar. At 10:40 p.m., they left and went to a nearby supermarket to buy protein bars. Eurydice then chose to walk home by herself. They shared an embrace, said their farewells, and Tony boarded a tram while Eurydice blew him a kiss and waved goodbye. Unbeknownst to her, someone was watching her, an ominous presence rather than a mere bystander. Her trip home was about 3 miles long, typically taking about an hour to walk at a leisurely pace. She felt confident in the safety of her route since she had walked it at night before, with well-lit streets guiding her way. However, when she reached Princess Park, she found herself surrounded by darkness. To make her journey quicker, she took off her shoes and socks and walked barefoot on the grass. After crossing the park and 2 soccer fields, she was only a short distance from home. At 12:02 a.m., she sent a message to her boyfriend Tony on Facebook saying, "I'm almost home. Where are you?" Just minutes after sending this message, she experienced a tragic and horrific event. On the night of June 13th, at approximately 2:50 a.m., a passerby found Eurydice on a soccer field in Princess Park. The passerby immediately called for an ambulance and the police, while trying to perform CPR on Eurydice, but sadly, it was too late. She had been strangled and had already died. The park had several surveillance cameras installed, and the police quickly accessed footage showing Eurydice walking alone in the park, with a young man about 100 feet behind her. This man had fluffy golden hair, unkempt stubble, and appeared to be overweight, short, and stocky, moving in a bear-like shuffling manner. To further the investigation, the police shared the surveillance video with local TV stations and urged anyone who recognized the suspicious individual to step forward. On the evening of June 13th, 19-year-old James Todd contacted the police after his friends told him they had seen his face on the news in relation to the death of Eurydice in Princess Park. James strongly denied any involvement, insisting he was not the person in the surveillance footage. The police asked him to come to the station for questioning. When he arrived, he continued to proclaim his innocence, answering 660 questions and affirming he had no connection to the crime. James also consented to provide a DNA sample. After Eurydice's body was discovered, a spontaneous memorial formed at the location, with people bringing flowers to pay their respects. On June 18, 2018, just 5 days after her death, a large crowd of tens of thousands gathered to honor her memory. A vigil was planned at a nearby football field, but the event was overshadowed by an unsettling incident the night before. Someone vandalized the grass by painting a massive 75-foot depiction of male genitalia. Firefighters and city workers found it impossible to remove the paint, leading them to excavate and replace parts of the lawn at a cost of $20,000. The vandal was quickly identified as Andrew Null, a 29-year-old blogger and men's rights activist, who admitted that his intention was to provoke outrage among feminists. At first, James Todd claimed he was innocent. However, during a later interrogation, when the detective mentioned that DNA evidence from the crime scene was being analyzed, James's attitude changed. He hung his head and said that more testing was not needed. James then confessed to being in Princess Park the night of the incident and admitted to murdering and assaulting Eurydice. He took responsibility for her tragic death. In November 2018, James described his activities from the day of June 12 in detail. He started his day with college classes in Broadmeadows, a suburb of Melbourne, which ended at 3 p.m. After class, he met up with 3 friends at the train station. They bought strong liquor and rolling papers for cigarettes before taking a train to Melbourne. They spent some time in Batman Park, where they shared a bottle of alcohol. Once that was finished, James bought cider and got some marijuana from other people. Around 8 p.m., one friend left, and James and the remaining 2 friends went back to the station. There, they purchased another bottle of liquor and some Coca-Cola. The trio then took the train back towards Broadmeadows, getting off at different stations. James was the first to get off at Newmarket Station around 9 p.m., while his friends continued on their journey. James recounted his experience after arriving at Newmarket Station around 9:30 p.m. He wandered aimlessly and headed towards Elizabeth Street. At 10:43 p.m., he noticed Eurydice near a supermarket with her boyfriend, Tony. After a quick stop at McDonald's for a snack, he returned to the spot where he had seen Eurydice. He watched as she blew a kiss to Tony as he left, and then Eurydice began her walk home, unaware that James was discreetly following her. He felt a strong, inexplicable attraction to her. James decided to follow the 22-year-old Eurydice, who was wearing a black dress. For about an hour, he trailed her for 3 miles, maintaining a distance of about 150 feet. Whenever Eurydice slowed her pace, he would stop to smoke. At 11:54 p.m., surveillance cameras captured Eurydice and her companion walking by the University of Melbourne. Shortly after, while walking through Princess Park, Eurydice texted her boyfriend Tony to let him know she was almost home. Just minutes later, around midnight, she encountered a terrifying situation. While crossing the 3rd soccer field, James attacked her from behind, pulling her hair and dress, knocking her down, and pinning her to the ground. He sat on her chest and grabbed her neck. In a desperate effort to fight back, Eurydice scratched his face, neck, and shoulders. However, James was too strong for her. After assaulting her, He briefly considered attacking her again but found himself too exhausted. Ultimately, he strangled Eurydice until she died. James told investigators that when he first saw Eurydice, he thought she was drunk and wanted to talk to her, believing it would be entertaining. However, an autopsy revealed that Eurydice had no alcohol or drugs in her system. Medical examiners determined that she died from strangulation and blunt force trauma to her head and body. After committing the crime, James took her phone and left the park. He found a bench at a bus stop and slept there until 4 a.m. When he woke up, he used the phone to take a selfie, checking the scratches on his face and body. He then went into the bushes to use the restroom and removed his t-shirt, which he used to wipe himself. This t-shirt, featuring a skull design and the words, "What Men Fear," was left behind in the bushes. James went back to Prince's Park, where the police were already investigating. After leaving the park, he stopped briefly before heading home, stopping to buy coffee and a pie along the way. By 7 a.m., he was at home and quickly searched online for information about Prince's Park. The first article he found reported on the tragic incident. He then started looking for adult films, specifically searching for content similar to what happened the night before with Eurydice. He browsed through 4 pages of search results for videos featuring women who resembled her. That evening, a friend called to inform him that he had been seen on TV in a news report about the deceased girl. After this call, James got the phone number for the police station and decided to reach out to them. Investigators found that James had a history of visiting explicit websites and had violent fantasies before the crime. His girlfriend noted he sometimes grabbed her neck during intimacy, but his internet searches revealed a deeper interest in extreme violence than he showed in their relationship. At 19 years old, James was both a student and working, hoping to build a career in the restaurant industry while studying that field. He lived with his parents and often stayed up late watching adult videos, particularly those where a woman met a violent end. This obsession escalated to the point where he wanted to recreate these scenarios in real life. This compulsive thought increasingly consumed him, disrupting his peace and affecting his ability to live a normal life. James lived in extremely poor conditions. When the police visited his family's home, they described it as the most run-down place they had ever seen. The household included 5 members, the parents and their 3 sons, with James being the middle child. Their living environment was chaotic, worsened by several pets and a kitchen that had collapsed due to rotting floors. Cooking was done on a stove in the bathroom next to a constantly clogged toilet. The house was filled with clutter, trash, and debris in every room, making it nearly unlivable. Food waste was left scattered everywhere. James rarely stayed at home, often sleeping on desks during classes or on park benches. His mother admitted that their home's condition was partly due to her struggle with depression, but James noted that their living situation had always been neglected. There was no specific mention of the father's role or involvement in the family's situation. Before committing the crime, James had moved away from his family home and spent most of his time at his girlfriend's house. She noticed a change in his behavior, which she believed was due to the stress of finishing college and uncertainty about his future in the restaurant industry. During the trial, it was revealed that James had been diagnosed with a mild form of autism spectrum disorder and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder in childhood. He had a strong fascination with dinosaurs, primarily playing with dinosaur toys, and often had tantrums over everyday issues, such as food, household items, and public transportation. During his teenage years, James underwent psychiatric treatment multiple times due to concerns from his teachers about his antisocial behavior. It is important to understand that while autism and Asperger syndrome can manifest in various ways, these conditions do not inherently lead to harmful or dark sexual tendencies. In James's case, 2 psychiatrists who evaluated him concluded that he showed signs of a sadistic personality disorder, which they believed contributed to the tragic events. While these medical professionals agreed that there is no direct link between autism and criminal behavior, they noted that the combination of James's autism and his sadistic personality traits likely played a role in the unfortunate outcome. James's friends saw him as friendly and happy, just like anyone else. They recognized that he could apologize, tell right from wrong, and generally acted sensibly. However, a psychiatrist who evaluated him found that he struggled with social interactions, hinting at deeper issues. During his trial, 2 psychiatrists provided conflicting opinions about James's crime. One psychiatrist suggested that James did not fully plan the attack until it actually began, implying that his actions were somewhat spontaneous. On the other hand, the second psychiatrist believed that James had a clear intention to act on his disturbing fantasies. This perspective suggests that James understood the potential consequences of his encounter with Eurydice and that his behavior was a conscious effort to realize those fantasies. During the trial, James made an alarming statement, revealing that he felt relieved to be caught. He confessed to being terrified when he realized he had turned his long-standing thoughts into actions. The judge determined that James had deliberately murdered a vulnerable young woman, acting on his twisted desires and with the intention of fulfilling his immoral fantasies. As a result, on September 2, 2019, James was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 35 years. When he becomes eligible for parole, he will be 54 years old. Jason Todd, James's father, took to social media to share his condolences with the Eurydice Dixon family. In his posts, he expressed his personal grief, fearing he might never be able to hug his son again. He also shared screenshots of insults and criticisms he received, calling those who attacked him spiteful. However, he later deleted all these posts from his social media. James's legal team aimed to appeal his life sentence, arguing that it was too harsh. They pointed out several key factors. James was only 19 when the crime occurred, he had no previous criminal record, and many people described him as kind. His lawyers also emphasized his full admission of guilt, his expressed remorse, his autism diagnosis, and the poor living conditions in his family home as reasons to lessen his sentence. Despite these arguments, the appeal was ultimately denied. Detectives investigating the Eurydice case have observed that James's current prison cell has much better living conditions than his previous one. He reportedly keeps his cell extremely clean. James continues to express remorse for his actions, and his experience in prison is considered more difficult for him than for most inmates. Psychiatrists involved in the case believe that if released, James would pose a significant threat to women. Following the tragic death of Eurydice, the bar where she performed her last comedy show decided to cancel its Tuesday comedy nights in her memory and to honor her legacy. The Melbourne government introduced grants to support emerging female comedians. In contrast, blogger Andrew, who vandalized the memorials for Eurydice, was found guilty and sentenced to 5 months in prison. This incident brought Andrew some notoriety, and he participated in several interviews afterward. In one interview, he stated that his actions were not only a protest against feminism but also stemmed from his outspoken opposition to vaccination. He claimed to believe that vaccines are linked to autism. The tragic death of Eurydice sparked renewed discussions about women's safety and gender inequality. After the incident, police recommended that women be more cautious at night, advising them to avoid walking alone and to carry a mobile phone. However, many feminists argue that it shouldn't be women's responsibility to alter their behavior. They stress that the focus should be on preventing men from committing acts of physical and psychological violence against women. The case of Anna Delvey. Anna Delvey, whose real name is Anna Sorokin, was born on January 23, 1991, in Domodedovo, near Moscow, Russia, to a truck driver and a mother who ran a small shop. In 2007, when she was 16, Anna's family moved to Germany, where her father ran a transport company that unfortunately went bankrupt in 2013. He later moved to the heating and cooling industry. During this time, Anna's mother focused on running the household. Anna attended a Catholic school, where former classmates described her as quiet and modest, and she struggled with German. In 2010, Anna began studying at an art and design college, but dropped out after 3 years. In 2013, at the age of 22, she moved to Paris. There, she interned at a popular French magazine and took on a new identity, Anna Delvey. She said Delvey was her mother's maiden name, but it was later discovered that this was not true. While in Paris, Anna began attending Fashion Week events and social gatherings. Her parents supported her financially as much as they could, and she repeatedly told them that investing in her future was the best decision. In 2016, Anna moved to New York and quickly began attending high society events where she mingled with the wealthy. She was able to attend these high society gatherings through her relationship with Oliver Zahm, the editor-in-chief of the French magazine where she interned. At these events, she introduced herself as Anna Delvey, claiming to be a wealthy German heiress with a fortune of 60 million euros in Swiss bank accounts. Details about her father's occupation are unclear and widely speculated. Some believe he was a diplomat, others that he owned an oil company, while a few believe he was an antiques dealer. While in New York, Anna befriended the famous art collector Michael Sufu Hang, who shared with her his ambition to open a private art museum. When Michael mentioned his plans to attend an art exhibition in Venice, Italy, Anna expressed her desire to join him. Michael agreed and paid for Anna's flight and hotel accommodations, which she would reimburse him for later. In Venice, Anna chose to pay for everything in cash, which Michael found strange. When they returned to New York, Anna did not pay her debt for the trip. Michael eventually forgone the $3,000 she owed. In New York, Anna befriended Rachel Williams, a former photo editor for a fashion magazine. Rachel described Anna as demanding and rude to others. Despite this, the two women remained close friends. Anna began sharing her business idea with her friends, expressing her desire to buy a historic building on Park Avenue in Manhattan. She wanted to turn it into an art venue called the Anna Delvey Foundation. According to her, the building would include a gallery, retail stores, restaurants, bars, and a bakery on 6 floors. At the same time, Anna began using specialized software to create fake bank statements and other financial documents, ostensibly to prove her claim of 60 million euros in Swiss bank accounts. Initially, Anna began taking out small loans to support her lavish lifestyle, with the help of several financial advisors. One of these advisors was Joel Cohen, who is best known for his work investigating the financial machinations of notorious fraudster Jordan Belfort, whose story was portrayed in the film The Wolf of Wall Street. In November 2016, Anna sought a $22 million loan from City National Bank. She claimed the loan was necessary to renovate a historic building, collaborating with famous designers. She argued that the money was necessary because her personal assets were located outside the United States. To support her loan application, Anna provided forged documents that falsely stated that she owned 60 million euros. The bank's loan processing ran into trouble when an employee noticed an anomaly and requested a statement to verify her foreign assets. The bank employee then received a document via email, purportedly from someone named Peter Henney, which turned out to be another forgery. The bank employee was suspicious that the email came from a personal account, but Anna explained, "Peter is our family's financial advisor." Despite Anna's explanation, the bank continued to scrutinize her documents. A few months later, they refused to give Anna a loan because she could not prove the source of the money in Switzerland. After being rejected by City National Bank, Anna turned to Fortress Investment Group for a loan. The CEO there was skeptical of her loan application because of discrepancies in her documents. Anna claimed to be German, but her passport showed that Anna Sorokin was born in Russia, which raised concerns. When the director decided to investigate Anna's declared assets further and wanted to meet with her Swiss bankers, Anna quickly withdrew her loan application to avoid further scrutiny. Despite difficulties with two major financial institutions, Anna managed to secure loans totaling $200,000 from various banks using forged documents. This large sum of money allowed her to enjoy a lavish lifestyle for several months. In January 2017, Anna threw a lavish birthday party at a trendy restaurant. Her friends and acquaintances recalled the event as a huge success. However, a few days after the party, restaurant staff contacted attendees asking for Anna's contact information because she had left without paying the bill for the lavish event. Anna eventually resolved the situation by paying the outstanding balance in cash. On February 18, 2017, Anna checked into the 11 Howard Hotel, where she quickly became acquainted with the manager, Neff Davis. Anna began this friendship by tipping Neff $100 in exchange for information about the top restaurants in Soho. Neff noticed that other hotel guests often had a negative opinion of Anna due to her rudeness and lack of tact, her habit of not expressing gratitude, and her tendency to wander around the hotel in her bathrobe. Despite this, the hotel staff was eager to serve Anna, as she was known for leaving generous tips. Over time, Anna and Neff became closer, and Neff became Anna's personal assistant. Instead of paying her in the usual way, Anna paid Neff by taking her out to dinner at high-end restaurants, treating her to high-end beauty treatments, and arranging luxury massages. Once, Anna took Neff to a high-society party attended by the famous actor Macaulay Culkin. Another time, they visited a personal trainer, Casey Duke, who later joined their group of friends. During her stay at the luxury hotel, Anna indulged in various luxury experiences. She regularly visited high-end beauty salons to get eyelash extensions, which cost around $400 each. She also shopped for luxury branded items and frequently dined at expensive restaurants. All of these luxury expenses were charged to her account at the 11 Howard Hotel. After Anna's 3-week stay at the hotel, management discovered that the credit card information she provided upon check-in was invalid. The hotel owner then demanded that Anna immediately pay the $30,000 bill. After reluctantly paying, Anna was nearly broke due to her continued spending on expensive food and services. After this incident, Anna cut back on socializing. She spent most of her time with her 3 closest friends, Neff, Casey, and Rachel. When asked about her financial problems, Anna refused to discuss them. One day, Anna invited Neff to dinner at a restaurant. After the meal, Anna's bank card was declined when she tried to pay. She then gave the waiter 12 different credit card numbers, but none of them worked. Neff had no choice but to pay the $283 bill from her savings. However, a few days later, Anna reimbursed Neff for the expenses and even returned 3 times the amount in cash. In April 2017, Anna used fake documents to secure a $70,000 loan. She immediately used $30,000 of that to pay her outstanding bill at the 11 Howard Hotel. The following month, she submitted a fake wire transfer confirmation from Deutsche Bank to arrange a charter flight on a business jet to Omaha, Nebraska. Her goal was to attend an annual investor meeting in an attempt to meet billionaire Warren Buffett. Also in May 2017, Anna invited several friends, including journalist Rachel Williams, fitness trainer Casey Duke, and a camera crew, to travel with her to Morocco. The trip was to film a documentary about her charity, the Anna Delvey Foundation. She booked a luxury villa in a 5-star hotel, costing $7,000 a night, which included 3 bedrooms, a private pool, and a personal assistant. Early in the vacation, Casey Duke suffered from food poisoning and had to return to the United States for medical attention. A few days later, the hotel staff informed Anna that they were unable to process her credit card payment. Anna accused the staff of entering her card information incorrectly, leading to a hotel employee being fired for failing to properly verify the payment information. In a pinch, Anna convinced Rachel to pay a large bill of $62,000, equivalent to Rachel's annual salary. Rachel also paid for Anna's flight to Morocco, various shopping sprees, and a private tour of the Majorelle Gardens with her credit card. Anna promised Rachel that she would pay her back later. However, after they returned, Anna only paid back $5,000, leaving Rachel heartbroken and forcing her to borrow money from others to pay the rent on her New York apartment. By July 2017, complaints about Anna began to surface, particularly from designer Mark Kremers, whom Anna had hired for branding services the year earlier. Mark demanded payment for his work, which totaled $17,000. During this time, Anna moved frequently between hotels, accumulating significant debt and repeatedly defaulting on her bills. Eventually, she faced a serious financial crisis and reluctantly sought refuge with her friend Casey. One day, the two women met at a restaurant to discuss Anna's life and financial problems. Anna was initially evasive, but eventually broke down in tears during the conversation. She claimed that her financial troubles would end when she purchased the historic building she had been eyeing. At this point, Rachel realized that she was unlikely to recover the remaining amount of money Anna owed her. Prompted by this realization, Rachel wrote a letter to the local prosecutor's office. Within an hour of sending the letter, law enforcement officials contacted her, revealing that they had opened a criminal investigation into Anna. On October 3, 2017, while undergoing addiction treatment at a rehabilitation center in Los Angeles, Anna was arrested and charged with grand theft and check fraud. In the spring of 2019, 28-year-old Anna Delvey went on trial in a months-long case. She was found liable for debts totaling at least $275,000 to various entities and individuals. During the trial, the prosecution argued that Anna's offending took place over 10 months between November 2016 and August 2017. They claimed that Anna's strategy involved funding the lavish lifestyles of her middle-class friends to avoid raising suspicions about her supposed wealth. Conversely, she relied on wealthier acquaintances who were less vigilant about their spending to cover her own expenses. In her defense, Anna's lawyer asserted that his client genuinely believed in her future financial prospects and her ability to repay her debts. He argued that Anna's social environment, characterized by arrogance and pretense, with people often glorifying their lives on social media, played a significant role in influencing her to engage in fraudulent activities. For each court appearance, she wore the latest designer clothes, styled by a professional who worked with Courtney Love. Throughout the trial, Anna wore high-end designer outfits and repeatedly expressed her dissatisfaction with what she considered inaccurate media coverage of her trial. Although she did not consider herself a fraud, she was convicted. Anna Delvey was sentenced to 4 to 12 years in prison, fined $24,000, and ordered to pay $200,000 in restitution to the victims. In a public interview with journalists, Anna confidently stated that she did not regret her past actions. She even stated that if she could reconsider her decision, she would choose the same path. In 2019, Anna's acquaintance, Rachel Williams, released a book called My Friend Anna. The book details Rachel's personal encounters with Anna, focusing in particular on how their trip to Morocco significantly impacted her life. While Anna was in prison, her social media accounts remained active. She used them to inform her followers of how to contact her and provide instructions on how to send her money via cryptocurrency. In prison, Anna paid close attention to her health and appearance. She made sure to sleep at least 12 hours a day and spent 9 hours a week practicing yoga. She proudly talked about her physical changes, saying that she lost weight and grew a few inches. Without a phone, she spent her time reading. Anna also expressed dissatisfaction with the prison food, especially the lack of fresh greens and broccoli. She made her own nut milk, grew her own greens, and tried new organic products from the prison grocery store. Anna Delvey was released from prison on February 11, 2021, after serving 4 years. She soon returned to her lavish lifestyle by moving into a high-end hotel. This was possible because Netflix paid her for the rights to her story, and she used some of the money to pay off her debts. However, her freedom did not last long. On March 25, 2021, Anna was arrested by the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. She was detained for 18 months due to her visa expiring. The decision to detain her was influenced by the immigration judge's assessment that if released, Anna would likely return to her fraudulent activities. In February 2022, Netflix released the series, Inventing Anna, written by Shonda Rhimes, who is known for creating Grey's Anatomy and Scandal. Julia Garner plays Anna Delvey. Reports indicate that Netflix paid Anna $320,000 to acquire the rights to her story. Currently, Anna is under house arrest in an apartment in New York, where she is not allowed to use the internet and strictly adheres to this rule. She regularly calls her parents. In addition, she participates in magazine photo shoots and gives interviews. In January 2023, a photo was taken to celebrate her 32nd birthday in style at her home in New York. Anna has ambitious plans for the future. She wants to start her own reality TV show and hopes to have Madonna and Elon Musk as guests. The case of Dorothy Stratton. Dorothy Stratton was born on February 28, 1960, in a neighborhood on the outskirts of Vancouver. Her parents moved to Canada from the Netherlands a year after her birth. The Hoek-Stratton family later welcomed a son, John, and 7 years after that, a daughter named Louise. The Hoek-Strattons lived a very simple life. Dorothy did well in school. She never dreamed of becoming a celebrity or pursuing a glamorous career as a child. All Dorothy wanted were basic things her poor family couldn't afford. In 1977, Dorothy, a high school student, worked as a waitress at Dairy Queen. With blonde hair, a beautiful face, and a youthful body for her age, she quickly attracted the attention of many customers. It wasn't just young men who noticed her, even older, affluent men were captivated by her beauty. One evening, about 30 minutes before the snack bar closed, a charming young man named Paul Snyder entered and immediately noticed Dorothy. Paul ordered, and when paying, handed her a high-denomination note. Dorothy said she could not return change for such a large sum. Paul smiled and suggested she keep the change if she agreed to go on a date with him right away. Dorothy agreed. At that time, 26 years old, Paul Snyder was well known in Vancouver. He worked as a manager and scout for nightclub performers. He had many friends and connections across Canada. When Paul first saw 17 years old Dorothy, a blonde with a bright smile and graceful figure, he immediately saw her potential. He took her on a date to a fancy restaurant and later gave her a red evening gown, which she wore to her high school prom. Paul and Dorothy began a relationship. Her parents were not worried about their romance and did not stop their daughter from seeing Paul, a man 9 years older than her. A few months into their relationship, Paul began urging Dorothy to participate in a bold photo shoot. Initially, she was hesitant, but Paul was convincing, saying she had great potential in modeling and could make a lot of money. Eventually, she agreed. Paul booked a studio, hired a professional photographer, and set up a nude photo shoot for Dorothy. After the shoot, he sent the photos to the editorial team of the famous men's magazine, Playboy. Dorothy's pictures caused a sensation, and a Playboy editor invited her to Los Angeles. Knowing her parents would disapprove of her working for such a magazine, Paul forged Dorothy's mother's signature, pretending she allowed her daughter to sign a contract with the well-known magazine. In the summer of 1979, Paul and Dorothy traveled from Canada to the United States, arriving in Hollywood. By August, Dorothy had gained fame as Playboy magazine's Playmate of the Month and began working at the Playboy Club. She told her friends over the phone that she felt overwhelmed with her new job. Unfamiliar with the spotlight, she found it intimidating as wealthy men were captivated by her, eager to spend time with her and shower her with compliments. Paul was always by her side, providing support. He acted as her manager and chauffeur, arranging photo shoots and negotiating contracts. Dorothy's life was completely controlled by him. To strengthen their relationship, Paul proposed marriage to Dorothy. Initially, she was unsure about getting married but eventually agreed because she felt grateful to him. Dorothy realized that without Paul, she might still be working as a waitress at a snack bar and relying on tips. Her life wouldn't have transformed into a fairy tale. Dorothy's family warned her against marrying Paul, believing he was exploiting her for money. In 1979, Paul and Dorothy got married in Las Vegas. The wedding was simple without any extravagant celebrations. After marriage, they both worked hard. Dorothy was involved in filming several movies, where directors praised her not only for her beauty and charm but also for her acting skills. As Dorothy's fame and income grew, she used her money to buy a large home in Los Angeles, where she lived with her husband, Paul. He was proud of his wife's success and told his friends that her rising popularity was a shared achievement. As her manager, he was always present at her photo shoots and events, managing their finances and assets. He monitored her diet, clothing, and alcohol consumption at social events and sometimes advised her on whom to become close with among influential people to advance her career. There were rumors about Dorothy having a romantic relationship with Hugh Hefner, the chief editor of Playboy magazine. However, Hugh denied these claims, saying that Dorothy was not a woman of loose morals. As time went on, Dorothy realized that her husband Paul was becoming overly controlling. She hired a new professional manager and started excluding Paul from photo shoots by making up various excuses. This causes a rift in their relationship, and as Paul noticed the growing distance, his mental health worsened. Paul became insanely jealous and even hired a private detective to track her movements, but no evidence was found. Paul began to impose rules on Dorothy's clothing choices, forbidding her from wearing revealing clothes. He provoked arguments and, in anger, he even resorted to violence. Dorothy felt unable to stand Paul's anger, so she increasingly tried to stay away from him. Friends and colleagues noticed the growing issues in Paul and Dorothy's marriage. Playboy staff often encouraged Dorothy to end her relationship with him. While Dorothy was busy with photo shoots, Paul stayed at home, relying on her income and remaining idle. One day, Paul discovered that Dorothy had started a company in her name and was investing in it. This action, recommended by her manager, had been meticulous planned so that, in the event of a divorce, Paul would not be able to claim the money. As Dorothy rarely came home, Paul's behavior worsened, leading to more scandals as he felt his influence over her diminishing. In the spring of 1980, at a party at the Playboy Mansion, 20-years-old Dorothy met the famous 40-years-old film director, Peter Bogdanovich, a close friend of Hugh Hefner. The director Peter was impressed by Dorothy and invited her to star in his upcoming comedy. They all laughed. Dorothy accepted the role of a mistress in a comedy. On March 22nd, she traveled alone to New York for filming. She lied to her husband, saying the director had banned anyone but the cast and crew from the set, she persuading Paul to stay in Los Angeles. In reality, she was worried Paul might cause trouble during the shoot. Additionally, Dorothy asked her manager to block calls from Paul while she was in New York. She fell very much in love with Peter, and a passionate romance developed between them. Dorothy was delighted with this new relationship and didn't want to miss the chance to be with Peter, a sophisticated, wealthy, and influential director. Dorothy's attitude towards Paul became cold and distant. She spent 2 months in New York, leaving Paul alone in their large Los Angeles home. During this time, He occasionally brought other women home, who were surprised to find he was cheating on such Dorothy, a beautiful wife, a Playboy model. In April 1980, Dorothy traveled back to California for the Playboy Award ceremony, where she was honored as Playmate of the Year and featured on the magazine's cover. For this achievement, Playboy awarded her a Jaguar sports car and $200,000 in cash. Dorothy formed a close friendship with Hugh Hefner, Playboy's chief editor, who had high hopes for her future. After the ceremony, she embarked on a 2-week promotional tour in Canada. During weekends, she flew out for dates with director Peter. She planned to spend the last days of her tour with her family in Vancouver. When Paul found out, he immediately flew to Canada, using his experience as a nightclub manager and his connections in Vancouver. During Dorothy's short vacation, Paul forced her to work in clubs and kept all the earnings. This led to a major argument between them, in which Dorothy tearfully offers to give up her career to save their marriage. Dorothy proposed that they both return to her parents and start over. However, Paul refused this suggestion. After the Canadian tour, Dorothy went back to New York to continue filming the comedy, They All Laughed. She ignored Paul's calls and distanced herself further from him. Eventually, Dorothy called Paul and asked for more freedom in their relationship. Paul was depressed and very angry with his wife, Dorothy. At that time, Paul was involved with a young girl who was not yet 18 years old. She had a Dorothy-like appearance, and he wanted her to become a new Playboy bunny. However, he soon realized that his young lover could never outshine Dorothy. In June 1980, on their first wedding anniversary, Paul received a distressing letter from Dorothy. She expressed her desire for a divorce and stated that she would stop providing him with financial support. This confirmed Paul's fears. He was now convinced that Dorothy was having an affair with the director Peter Bogdanovich. In response, Paul hired a private investigator to gather evidence of Dorothy's affair. At one point, Paul called Dorothy's manager, threatening to cause a disturbance or possibly do something more drastic. The manager advised Dorothy to hire a bodyguard and be cautious of her jealous husband, Paul, but she ignored this advice. As a non-resident alien in America without a green card, Paul faced challenges finding work. His financial situation was worsening, so he started using money from their joint bank accounts and sold Dorothy's valuable items, such as collectibles, jewelry, and her Jaguar sports car, which she had received from Playboy. He sold these at significantly lower prices and only accepted cash. Additionally, Paul began renting out rooms in their large home to friends, partly because he was feeling depressed and lonely. Over time, he started thinking about returning to his home country, Canada. In mid-July, the filming of They All Laughed finished, and afterward, Dorothy and Peter went on a 10-day trip to England. They returned to Los Angeles on July 30th, and Dorothy moved into Peter's mansion in the upscale Bel Air area on the afternoon of July 31st. Paul borrowed a handgun from a friend late that evening and went to Peter's house. He determined to shoot anyone who approached the gates. After waiting for several hours and growing impatient, Paul drove to a mountain area overlooking Los Angeles at night. He later told a friend that while alone in the mountains, he was plagued by thoughts of end his life. Late that night, Paul returned home. A week later, on August 8th, Paul convinced Dorothy to meet him at their house. He hoped to rekindle their relationship, reminiscent of the charm he had when they first met at a small diner. However, Dorothy had changed. She was now a confident woman, no longer influenced by her husbands to persuade her. Dorothy told Paul she loved another man and wanted to divorce he. Staying calm, Paul asked her to come back in a week to discuss their separation details peacefully. The next day, Paul tried to buy a gun but had trouble because of his Canadian citizenship. He even asked his private investigator to get a rifle for self-defense and home security, but the detective refused to help. On August 11th, Paul saw a newspaper ad for a hunter selling a used 12-gauge shotgun. He drove to the San Fernando Valley to check it out and possibly buy it, but he got lost and couldn't find the address, so he returned empty-handed. On August 13th, Paul went back to the same place. This time, he found the seller and bought the old shotgun, claiming he planned to go hunting. On August 14th, before meeting Dorothy, Paul asked his housemates to leave until the afternoon to ensure privacy for his conversation with his wife. Dorothy's managers and assistants had advised her to take them to the meet or to handle the divorce matters over the phone. However, Dorothy decided to go alone, bringing a large sum of money with her, intending to thank Paul for what he had done for her. She wants the divorce to be amicable and hopes to maintain a cordial relationship with him. Thinking the meet would be quick, so she planned a photo shoot for later that evening. Dorothy got home at noon on August 14th to meet Paul. He politely invited her in. A little while later, her phone rang. It was a safety check call from her manager. They had agreed beforehand that if Dorothy faced any issues, she would use a specific code word during the call. She reassured the manager that everything was fine and ended the conversation swiftly. The discussion between Dorothy and Paul continued, but it eventually turned into a dispute. Suddenly, in a violent rage, Paul took out a shotgun and fatally shot Dorothy in the face. It was reported that after this heinous act, Paul committed lewd acts on his deceased wife, and he finally ended his life. At 8 p.m., the housemates Paul's returned to the house and noticed that Dorothy's car was parked outside. Then, they found her purse in the living room and assumed that Paul had reconciled with his wife and they were together in the bedroom. The Paul's housemates retreated to their room, turned on the television, and tried to make as little noise as possible to not invade the couple's privacy. Meanwhile, Dorothy's managers were increasingly worried because she had stopped answering their calls. At 11 p.m., they finally managed to reach someone at Paul and Dorothy's house. The housemates answered the call and, after hanging up, decided to check the master bedroom. There, they encountered a horrifying scene. Both Dorothy and Paul were dead. Forensic specialists determined that 20-year-old Dorothy Stratton died about an hour after arriving at the house. Her 29-year-old husband, Paul Snyder, died roughly an hour after her. Hugh Hefner was one of the first to be informed of the tragedy and took it upon himself to notify his friend Peter Bogdanovich. Upon learning of Dorothy's death, Peter was so overwhelmed that he fainted. He then spent a long period under sedatives to cope with the shock and grief. The August edition of Playboy magazine had already been sent for printing, so the editors couldn't change the cover in time. Consequently, it featured Dorothy Stratton, who had tragically passed away. However, for the annual Playboy calendar, her image was replaced with that of another model. Hugh offered his perspective on the tragic incident, saying, "Dorothy, a poor girl from a small town, who makes it into a magazine, moving to Hollywood, having a brilliant career, and then tragically dying at her peak." According to Hugh, Paul was a disturbed person who felt his good fortune slipping away, which led him to commit this terrible act. Peter took charge of organizing and financed Dorothy's funeral. Her loss deeply affected him, and he opted for cremation, with her ashes placed in a Los Angeles cemetery. After Dorothy's tragic death, the film studio decided not to release They All Laughed. However, with the determination to introduce his work, Peter purchased the film rights using his own finances. The comedy, They All Laughed, was finally released in 1981. Despite the efforts, but the film was not recognized and failed to attract the attention of the audience. This commercial failure caused Peter to lose millions of dollars and eventually declare bankruptcy. Several years after Dorothy's death, rumors emerged about director Peter secretly meeting with her younger sister, Louise Stratton, who was 13 at the time. The Stratton family has denied these rumors and has filed a complaint regarding the spread of those rumors. However, in 1988, the 49-year-old Peter married the 20-year-old Louise Stratton. Louise later said in interviews that their romantic relationship started when she was 18. Peter and Louise's marriage lasted 13 years and ended in divorce in 2001. Peter never remarried and devoted his life to his film work. He passed away in 2022 at the age of 82. Louise currently lives in Vancouver, where she works as an actress and producer in Canada. The case of Deborah Newell. Deborah Newell was a stylish, successful, and affluent woman. Her wealth was not due to luck, but to her dedication and hard work. She spent many years developing a career in interior design and eventually founded her own company called Ambrosia. Deborah devoted 3 decades to this venture, driven by her passion for her profession. However, Deborah's personal life, especially her romantic relationships, has not been as smooth as her career. Despite being married 4 times, each marriage ended in divorce. She was a devoted mother to her 4 children, but her relationships with men consistently fell short. With her financial security in place, Deborah longed for a more basic and meaningful fulfillment, the happiness that comes from a stable family life. A few years earlier, her life changed dramatically due to a family tragedy. In March 1984, her older sister, Cindy, was killed by husband, Billy Vickers. During the trial, their mother testified against Cindy and supported Billy, resulting in a very light sentence for him. He only served a few years in prison for the murder. After this incident, Deborah suffered from extreme anxiety and panic attacks, especially fear of guns. Although she lived alone for a long time and was encouraged by some friends to buy a gun for self-defense, she couldn't stand having a weapon nearby. Deborah took great care of her appearance and enjoyed beautiful things. She invested considerable time and money in skincare, makeup, and hair. She had a vast collection of luxury items, including Chanel jewelry, Cartier accessories, Denam clothing, and Gucci shoes. However, she still craves a romantic partner. John Meehan was born in California on February 3, 1958, and raised there with his sisters, Karen and Donna. John's father was dishonest and often cheat. These bad qualities were passed on to his son. John engaged in various scams and illegal activities to make a living, including dealing drugs. His substance use and illicit dealings resulted in numerous run-ins with the law, culminating in his expulsion from California in 1988. Despite his criminal history, John earned a Bachelor of Arts degree from Arizona State University and later joined the law faculty at the University of Dayton. His good looks, he was about 6 feet 3 inches with hazel green eyes, thick dark hair, and a captivating smile, earned him the nickname Dirty John among friends because of his charm with women. After completing his education, John met Tanya Sells, a nurse anesthetist. They got married in November 1990, when Tanya was 25 and John was 31. Their relationship was built on lies, and John kept Tanya away from his family, said that they were malicious. While John was in medical school in Tennessee, Tanya supported him and assisted in obtaining his license as an anesthesiologist. They had 2 children, but their marriage eventually fell apart. Tanya discovered from John's mother and sisters that he had been lying to her about his past. She also found his hidden stash of stolen patient medications, revealing his addiction and explaining his volatile temper. Tanya reported him to the police, and after an investigation, John confessed. Instead of surrendering, John fled to Michigan and hid in a hotel. Police quickly located him unconscious, surrounded by empty pill bottles. An ambulance was called, and while en route to the hospital, John regained consciousness, grabbed some medication, and jumped out of the ambulance. John was arrested again and sentenced to 6 years in prison in Michigan for resisting arrest and possessing illegal drugs. Surprisingly, he served only 17 months. He managed to get his sentence reduced and was released in 2004. During this period, he met Deborah. John, 55, and Deborah, 59, decided to try online dating, and that's how they met. Deborah was impressed by John's online profile, where he described himself as a divorced doctor and a Christian looking for love. After a series of disappointing dates, Deborah was pleasantly surprised when she met John. John showed genuine interest in Deborah's life, praised her achievements, and seemed different from others. Their first date was in October 2014 at a restaurant called Houston in Irvine, California. John's aim was to win Deborah over, which he did by sharing stories about his past, including a fabricated account of working with Doctors Without Borders in Iraq. John talked about having 2 children and owning multiple properties. Deborah imagined an altruistic doctor who had dedicated his life to everyone. John treated her like she was the most wonderful woman in the world, a queen, satisfied Deborah's desire for companionship. He even expressed a desire to meet her family. His charming words made Deborah's heart flutter. They left the restaurant and went to her penthouse. However, John crossed a line. After a few kisses, he tried to take things further, which made Deborah uncomfortable. She then asked him to leave. The next morning, John tried to make up for his mistake by calling Deborah. He apologized and explained that he had drunk too much alcohol and couldn't control his emotions. This confession made Deborah forgive him, and they continued dating. As their relationship progressed, Deborah and John spent more and more time together. On their third date, John expressed his love and proposed to Deborah. She was so happy with their relationship that she ignored several oddities. For example, John always wore his old, slightly dirty medical scrubs. At a fashionable charity event hosted by Deborah, he showed up in his scrubs, saying he didn't have time to change. Despite this, Deborah didn't care and proudly introduced him to her friends. When their relationship became closer, they decided to move in together. Jacqueline, Deborah's daughter who lived with her in the attic, was usually direct and critical about her mother's partners. She didn't like John's scruffy appearance and found it strange that her mother, who usually dressed in Gucci clothes, was with someone who wore dirty clothes. Additionally, Jacqueline noticed John's peculiar interest in the statues and paintings in the attic, as if he were assessing their value. Just 5 weeks after meeting, John convinced Deborah that they should live separately. They rented a waterfront house on Balboa Island in Newport for $6,500 a month. Deborah paid $80,000 up front for several months of rent, while John didn't put his name on the lease due to tax issues. Deborah, infatuated with John, covered all the expenses herself without telling her children. She couldn't understand why her children disapproved of John, as he treated her like a queen, making her coffee in the morning, doing the grocery shopping, and trying to make her life easier. Deborah was confident that John was her perfect match. She hoped that, over time, her children would come to like him, imagining a future where they all became a happy family. To help make this happen, Deborah arranged for John to meet her younger daughter, Tara, who was more easygoing than Jacqueline. Tara lived in Las Vegas with her boyfriend, and after hearing about John on the phone, Tara decided to meet him in person. Tara's visit coincided with Deborah and John's move to their new house. From the first meeting, Tara felt uncomfortable with John. He was unfriendly and tried to act tough by quietly moving the furniture himself, which bothered her. Despite some doubts, but Tara also trusted John. However, she soon began to notice worrying signs. John didn't have a car and, although he claimed to own properties in Newport Beach and Palm Springs, he never suggested moving there or invited them to visit. Moreover, John seemed to spend most of his days at home, often engrossed in video games. Just before Thanksgiving, Tara decided to snoop through John's stuff and found a nursing certificate with his name, realizing he wasn't a doctor. When John found out, he was so angry, he accused Tara of trying to take away her mother's happiness. He yelled that she wouldn't succeed in breaking them up, while Deborah just stood there listening without any opinion. Eventually, there was a big argument, and Tara left the house. John manipulated the situation to persuade Deborah that her children only cared about her money and were just waiting for her to pass away, not wanting her happiness. On the night before Thanksgiving, Deborah's mother, Arlene, who was deeply religious, came to visit. John performed a religious ceremony in front of her, hoping for her approval, but it resulted in another argument. The holiday ended disastrously again. Following this, Deborah decided to consult a psychotherapist. The therapist advised her to set boundaries with her children and pursue the peaceful life she desires, which she chose to follow. Deborah and John made Balboa Island their home, enjoying the local restaurants, taking walks, and delighting in the picturesque views. Sometimes, John shows off his cheerful personality by taking topless selfies and sharing them with Deborah, which makes her feel more comfortable. Deborah was immensely happy, but she had one concern: John's style. He wore the same old medical scrubs, loose-fitting pants, and faded shirts every day, while Deborah wished for he to dress fashionably and complement her sumptuous lifestyle. John said that his nice clothes were stolen while he was in Iraq, so Deborah took him on a shopping trip to buy him a new set of expensive designer clothes. A short time later, in early December, John went with Deborah on a business trip to Las Vegas. Although they had only known each other for about 2 months, they decided to get married. Deborah didn't tell her children about the marriage. One time, a stranger broke into John and Deborah's home. John used this incident to convince Deborah that they needed to improve their home security. He then installed multiple security cameras in their home, which he could control using his smartphone. John began secretly watching his wife's office to closely supervision her every move. His goal was to have complete control over their surroundings. As time passed, Deborah started asking questions about John's past and his family. However, whenever she asked, John would quickly come up with a reason, despite his stories not quite adding up. Deborah overlooked these inconsistencies, believed she has found the perfect husband, but her children were not so sure. Jacqueline decided to look into John's activities. Since he didn't have a car of his own and often used Deborah's Tesla, she put tracking devices on the car to keep tabs on where John was going, but unfortunately, this surveillance didn't uncover anything out of the ordinary. Then, Jacqueline and Tara hired a private investigator to look into John's past. The investigator soon uncovered some surprising information. John had filed for bankruptcy and, although he had a nursing license, but he was not licensed to practice medicine. He had also lived in several states, including Arizona, Ohio, Indiana, Tennessee, and California, and had been associated with an address at the Orange County Jail. Despite these things, Deborah's feelings for John did not change. Later, in March, Deborah received a letter addressed to John from a former prison inmate. However, before she could read it, John quickly took the letter from her. Initially, he was angry and accused her of not trusting him. Then he said that he was emotionally supporting a pen pal. However, Deborah was not convinced by this explanation. The next day, while John was away at work, she searched through his belongings and discovered some shocking truths about the man she had married. It turned out that John was a former nurse anesthetist who had become addicted to pain medication, leading to his arrest and the downfall of his career. Deborah also discovered evidence of him cheating women he met online. Court records show John has a history of fraud and theft, and was even found in possession of items such as handguns, ammunition, a GPS tracker, and syringes in his storage unit. At this moment, Deborah discovered John's true identity, which sent a chill down her spine. John was a dangerous person with a history of crime, having been convicted of a felony and subject to multiple restraining orders from different women. What was even more disturbing was that he had been released from prison on October 8th, and just a few days later, he met Deborah. As Deborah thoroughly reviewed the documents, she was hit with a wave of shock and fear, realizing the potential threat that John could pose to her and her children. Deborah decided to pretend everything was normal until John left for the hospital to deal with his back problems. As soon as he was gone, she and her family quickly moved her out of the house. While packing your things, they found more disturbing documents belonging to John. These were printed copies of online comments from women who had encountered him before. The comments described John as a sophisticated liar, warning others not to be fooled by his good looks and charm. Deborah had decided to end her relationship with John and leave. However, John continued to send her messages, begging her to visit him in the hospital, which made Deborah feel guilty and eventually give in. By June 2015, John had convinced Deborah to get back together. He explained the strange items found among his belongings and confessed to hiding his past because he thought someone of her social status would not have been interested in him. He also admitted to pretending to be a doctor to impress her and now asked for her help to turn his life around. Deborah gave John another chance, and they moved to a new apartment in Irvine together. However, her children were deeply upset by this decision, leading Deborah and John to keep their distance from them for a while. By March 2016, Deborah and John had been married for 15 months. Deborah had been supporting John's recovery from addiction, but she is struggling with the fact that her entire family, especially her daughter Jacqueline, hates him. Contrary, John also disliked Deborah's two daughters, Tara and Jacqueline. John's animosity towards Jacqueline grew to the point where he forbade she from seeing Deborah. When John discovered that Deborah was paying for Jacqueline's real estate lessons, he called the school and slandered her in front of the teachers. He also sent she threatening and indecent messages, claiming that her mother wanted nothing to do with her and one day he will come and kill her. John's behavior was becoming increasingly cruel and sinister. In April 2016, Deborah has reached her limit of endurance and filed for divorce. She wanted to end the relationship peacefully, so she began withdrawing money from her bank account little by little to protect it. She had $30,000 hidden in one lower drawers. When John discovered this money, he claimed that it also belonged to him. Realizing that the case was heading towards divorce, he began to show aggression. Deborah realized she needed to escape. She grabbed some cosmetics and work items and moved to Jacqueline's apartment in Irvine. She felt safe there because the apartment complex had many surveillance cameras. Deborah tried to get a restraining order, but the Orange County judge denied her request because John posed no threat at that time. John lives in another state and has done her no harm. All she could do was end the relationship and try to move on. After breaking up, John moved into Deborah's apartment in Nevada. He constantly to contact her, but she ignored his calls. On June 11, 2016, John took a drastic step. While Deborah was at work, driving her Jaguar, her car was stolen from the parking lot. It was found about a block and a half away, soaked in gasoline. However, the car only had minor damage because it hadn't been set on fire. Security footage from the area clearly identified John as the thief who stole Deborah's car. On the evening of August 20, 2016, Tara came home from work and parked her car. As she got out, John unexpectedly appeared and attacked her with a knife, trying to pull her back into the car. Tara screamed for help during the struggle, and when John covered her mouth, she bit him hard. During the intense fight, Tara, wearing heavy boots, managed to kick John and knock the knife out of his hand. Seizing this opportunity, she picked up the knife and stabbed John multiple times, delivering a total of 13 wounds, the last stab hitting his eye. Shaken and in shock, Tara was seen by a neighbor who rushed over with a towel to help her and called the police. John was still alive when the paramedics arrived, as he had a pulse. In his car, authorities discovered items like duct tape, cable ties, kitchen knives, and a passport, suggesting he might have planned to kidnap Tara and flee the city with her as a hostage. John Meehan was taken to the hospital, but just 4 days later, at the age of 57, he died from his injuries. His body was cremated without a memorial service since he was disliked by all who knew him. Deborah and her children, Tara and Jacqueline, were left severely traumatized by the incident. It took a while for Deborah to return to normal life, and she continues to struggle with guilt for having brought a criminal into her family. Deborah is now very cautious. She carries a stun gun and pepper spray for protection at all times and has vowed never to meet someone online again.